The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make a lot of noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghosts. You're scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Okay! Game on!
Game on!
Game on!
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, just please take your seat about way. We're with the edge. It's clear for takeoff. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and liftoff.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott. It's good to have you along for the ride wherever you are on this great planet we love to call Earth. It is live right here in Uncle Jimbo's cabin on this Tuesday, March 7th, Wednesday, March 8th, if you're on the East Coast, as we do this thing 7 nights a week. Let's welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key in Newton, Georgia, at spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, on the United Public Radio Network, Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on Revolution Radio. Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy, is the official music behind Spaced Out Radio. Bumblefoot rocks us out and in and out of every show that we do on a nightly basis. Hey, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow me on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show on iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, and on Stitcher. And, of course, our website is SpacedOutRadio.com. And if you go over to Patreon.com, we have some really cool offers for you, our listeners there as well. Make sure you check those out tonight. If you want to take part in this show, because we do not have a chat room, we don't take phone calls, pardon me, you have to sign into one of the chat rooms, either on Revolution Radio, on Spreaker, on the UPRN chat room, on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club, or if you're on Twitter, just use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio Show, or Spaced Out Radio, that is. I will get to your questions and comments in there as well. If you head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, for just $5 a month, $5, that's it, we're going to make you an SOR space traveler. With that, we offer you some pretty decent swag, and it's our opportunity to give back to you. We have a new news section that we call The Encounter that deals with everything paranormal, courtesy of our editors, Eric Markham and Everett Thiemer. You can check out my latest blog on there as well. And if you've had a sighting that you cannot explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. That way our researcher, Mike Schmidt, can get into it with you. We are live on WQEE 99 Rock the Key, way down in Noonan, Georgia. Thanks for sharing your nights with us down here at SOR. Make sure you give their Facebook page a like as well. We're live in Las Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio. We're live on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Very nice to have you with us as well. And we are live on Revolution Radio. The Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. If you're a fan of Sasquatch, then you know up here in British Columbia, Canada, where I host this show, over the decades there have literally been thousands of Bigfoot sightings spread out across the province. Most famously on Vancouver Island and near Harrison Hot Springs on the mainland, about 2 hours east of Vancouver. Sasquatch has been seen from a distance as well as up close and personal. For our new listeners, in September of 2013, I actually had the opportunity to be within 100 feet of two of the majestic creatures. And just this past weekend, near Tofino, a surfing getaway on Vancouver Island, a Sasquatch was spotted by a fisheries officer. They found dozens of prints in the area. So with so much excitement around BC and this creature, the question is, what is it? Many researchers believe it's North America's own ape. Some say it's a long-lost relative of ancient Gigantopithecus. The spiritual people out there believe it's something totally different. They believe that it's a form of early human and should be treated as such. Whatever it is, we know people are seeing it. But as you know, there's rarely any good photos or video. Thomas Sewid is a respected and longtime investigator of Sasquatch. Even though he's from First Nations heritage, growing up with the legends and stories of his elders, Thomas has taken a more scientific look at what Bigfoot is. Having his own experiences with the creature, Thomas would love to see the actual mainstream accept that Sasquatch is real. And what a night to have him on as well. It's Thomas's birthday. Thomas Sewid, welcome to Space Out Radio. Happy birthday to you, my friend, and welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on. Good birthday present. Get to share some information with all of your listeners.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we appreciate you taking the time to share it with us as well, because it's kind of important. Birthdays are a big time for a lot of people, so we thank you for making time with us on this special night for you. How you been doing since the last time you were on the air?
Terrible. I've been in the city for the last 3.5 weeks. I had to take a job for time me over for a bit. Besides that, we have too much snow on Vancouver Island this winter to do any good researching.
Well, my researcher, Mike Schmidt, he was out in an area up here in the Caribou earlier today. and he found some pretty big tracks. Not big enough to identify them, but, he's a guy, he's probably stands 5'11", 6 feet, 265 pounds, very, very stocky, strong individual, and he was barely making a print in the snow, and these were inches down. And, it just goes to show right across this province that we call home in British Columbia, there's a lot of action happening around the world when it comes to, or around this province when it comes to Bigfoot.
Oh, yeah. Well, look at that tracks that they found in the snow and took pictures of and measured in Merritt area about 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. That was from a big one because, boy, the spread on it and the length of the footprints, they were huge.
Well, a lot of people have seen those tracks, Thomas, where literally they are absolutely having to hop between them or jump between them because the spread between footprints is so wide. It's just so... it's so unhuman, if I can use that term.
Yeah, those ones are unique because, like you said, they're so far apart. I think the thing was probably loping along, running, getting from point A to point B. You could see it wasn't, looking at the length of trackway, it wasn't doing any meandering or stalking or hunting or anything. That thing was definitely traveling. It was trying to get somewhere in a hurry by the looks of it.
Oh, yeah? When you grew up, and I realize you don't believe a lot of the legends and stories, and we're going to get into that a little bit later in the show, but when you grew up in a First Nations, or for our American listeners, American Indian culture, what was the stories that were told to you, Thomas, in regards to Sasquatch and the legends from your heritage?
Well, I believe the legends. You're wrong there that I don't believe them. I believe them firmly because our beliefs are legends. Number one, the stories, they belong to families. And you can't just go tell another family's legend under our Kwakwaka'wakw law, which is our tribal group of 18 recognized tribes from northern Vancouver Island and the northeastern side and all through the islands in between Vancouver Island and the mainland, as well as the mainland shore from the north part of Butte Inlet in the south all the way up to the entryway to Rivers Inlet. And it's a vast territory, so there's a lot of different tribes, a lot of different families. And because of the potlatch ceremony that we have to this day, which is held by families for a memorial to remember the past family members, to see a chieftainship title who someone passed away, there's a waiting period of 3 years or a little more, and then the next, I guess you could say, heir to the throne will coordinate with the family a potlatch, this great celebration where they'll remember the past people, feed the guests who come, and they'll open their family's gildas, which is the symbolic box of treasure, which is all of the legends and stories and songs and crests that the family has accumulated for thousands of years. And on the dance floors of these beautiful, what we call a big house, a gyuksi, which is designed like our traditional big house, or what some people call a long house, but the term's wrong. We call them big houses. The vertical posts holding up the great cedar beams that would hold the rafters that would hold the roof planks and the walls, of course, these houses that would accommodate anywhere from 20 to 60 people in a family group. Well, all those house posts used to be carved, and the front of the house was painted with crest figures. So when you go to a potlatch, the ceremonial big houses we now have in our communities, you're entering our cathedral, our chapel, our Congress, our parliament, our theater, our university, our college, to see the graduation ceremonies of adolescents entering the societies they were born or aspired to enter or were placed in. And you would see the dances and the songs that go with all this, as well as the family opening that box of treasure and sharing with you legends and stories that they hold title to, like Junachwa, the wild woman of the woods, which there's a male one as well that's used in potlatch in a certain chieftain part ceremony. But the Junachwa is the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot to the Kwakwaka'wakw people. And then, of course, you see the Bukwus dance, which is a from the spiritual realm. And the Spookles is said to be very small, short, bipedal, hair on its body. Some people, their families talk about it being kind of greenish in color and a skeletal form, meaning I guess its skin would be all shriveled and everything. And it has grimacing teeth. Some families, it has almost like it has horns on its head. But you'll see that as well as the natural animals we know about: grizzly bear, the kela, the black bear, the glay, the deer, the kawas, the mythical birds like Quiquicquanala, the thunderbird, Kulus, my family crest, which was the younger cousin of the thunderbird, double dorsal fin killer whale, and the list goes on. You watch all of this at the potlatches. And as a kid, I used to watch those Junachwa dances, and every family has a different story, a different dance. And the ones I liked was the families that had title to the Junachwa, the woman coming out of onto the floor to dance in this beautifully carved big house with a hollow cedar log, probably 20 feet long, with 30 or 40 men pounding on it with batons of wood. So the whole walls and that whole big house is just rumbling like you're in a cloud of thunder. And then you see these animals come out, and you see the Junachwa come out dancing with an empty basket on its back, and it's going through the different moves of what you would hear about and see when you see a Sasquatch, the same kind of posturing and strides and so forth, crouching down, kneeling down, all these different moves. And it all of a sudden, some families' dances, it looks like it's kind of alarmed and it's looking around like it's trying to find something. And then a whistle chirps, and all of a sudden, from hiding comes a child in a small Junachwa costume and cedar mask of the small infant Sasquatch, and it runs out and it jumps in the basket, and the dancer leaves the floor. That's the end of the dance. But it's so amazing to see that. And then I remember when I was a teenager hearing a report of someone, actually a non-native, seeing a creature that was bigger than a man, covered in hair, doing exactly that on a beach at low tide in early morning when he come around the corner walking. And this Sasquatch looked all alarmed and everything, and was looking around towards where the boulders and driftwood were on this beach. And then all of a sudden it whistle chirped, and this young one come running out from the boulders on the beach, big rocks, and jumped on that bigger one's back. And the mother just took off and disappeared into the rainforest. So that's one of the things that really intrigued me when I was young, was seeing the Junachwa being danced in the big houses by all the different families, sharing their treasure, sharing their stories. And what those stories are that you see in the big house are incidents that took place that one of their ancestors witnessed or saw or experienced. And that's, we never question that. That's our legends, our stories. And you don't disrespect the family by saying, oh, I don't believe your legend. You believe it. It's gospel truth when you see it in the big house. But it's so amazing to see that. And then as I got older and I started reading the books and everything, and I started, going out in the bush and working out there after I finished high school. But I spent, my childhood and my adolescence out in the bush too, because that's our way of life, learning how to clam dig, learning how to hunt, learning how to harvest fish in rivers where no people lived. And when I started hearing the other stories, it was kind of putting everything into context, where what I saw is a Kwakwaka'wakw in the big houses and still see to this day. And what I hear is identical. It's a mirror image of the native and the non-native sightings. And our native sightings go back tens of thousands of years. Like we say, our stories go back to the dawn of our creation. And we know that was thousands of years ago. And then when I had my encounters, what's one of the first thing I thought when I first saw two of them in the spotlight of my fishing boat? One dropped to its knee and put its arm up in front of its face. The female dropped to her knees and put her hands behind her head and put her forehead like onto the beach, so just that her back end and feet were pointing at us with the spotlight off my fish boat. But those were postures that I had seen in the big house. So as a researcher nowadays, and with, no offense to any of the listeners out there or yourself as the host, but in this modern day with white man's magic, the internet, podcasting, YouTube clips, putting videos up and sharing it to the entire world, since November, I've started to really, really share the First Nations perspective from my family and from my tribe. And I'm also half Cree from Saskatchewan. My mother's a full-blooded Cree Indian from central Canada. And I'm getting word out to the modern-day smoke signal of the internet to my fellow North American Indians, Canadian First Nations, that, hey, we need to start sharing our experiences and stories. And hopefully maybe that will help if we team up with the non-natives that are researching and having sightings. Maybe it'll help us work together cooperatively, and maybe we can share something that will finally get us to that end finish line, conclusive proof to the existence of Sasquatch Bigfoot in Turtle Island, North America.
When you look back on the legends that you were taught as a child, as you just explained to us, is Sasquatch a creature that is a very spiritual type creature, or is it an angry type creature, much like a cougar would be or a grizzly bear would be? What are we dealing with in the forests?
That's, to me, I got to walk a parallel path. I have to walk the path of a Kwakwaka'wakw, number one, so that the Junakwa, it's the most valuable crest to ever have and so for back with my ancestors' days, when you acquire a crest, if you don't have it, you marry into a family and you take that crest from them. The family who had it originally, they keep it forever, of course, but now you get it. But through our custom and culture, you have to pay dowry for it. And then once you get it, you can add it to your box of treasure. So the Junakwa, when you see the male one, is when the heir to the throne goes through everything that he's supposed to be the chief, the next chief of the family, raising a memorial pole for the past chief after his death, 3 years or a little longer, calling a potlatch to honor him and other family members, inviting the entire nation, and every family sends representation to this day, or try to, and you have to feed all these people. But at the end of the night's performance, because it usually ends, sometime anywhere from 10:30 at night to the sun coming up in the morning, and sometimes these potlatches are so large that they last for 2 days. So each end of each day, you have to give gifts to everyone who is in the family who comes. So when you host a potlatch nowadays in this modern world, it costs you $100,000 or more before you know it. Feeding all these people, you can imagine when 1,200 people come to your potlatch, that's a lot of food. When you have to give them gifts like towels and blankets and pots and pans and DVDs, and the list goes on, you make a lot of it, but you also purchase a lot of it. So you'll see this big house floor where you saw 40 different dances take place over a day or 2 day period. And you see the family lay tarps upon the dirt. And as the speeches are being conducted at the end of the potlatch after the peace dance, you see the family members bringing so many gifts that the floor is filled. And then they start handing it out to everyone. Money, bills, you name it. And it's a phenomenal thing to witness when you see that. So I have to, number one, know that the Junakwa, male and female, is so high ranked. It's the highest one on the tier structure of crests. That, yeah, it's from the spiritual realm. Even when you see it, its eyes, the way it's shaped and everything, sleepy. And sometimes, like in my people's winter village called Mimkamlis on Village Island in the western gateway to the Broughton Archipelago off northeastern Vancouver Island, in the labyrinth of islands at the mouth of Knight's Inlet, the pole that used to stand there, that's lying down and just about totally decomposed now, returning back to the forest. But the grizzly bear that was carved, second figure up from the bottom, its upper raised paws, it had two small faces with hollow eye sockets and a puckered mouth. And it showed the Junakwa face times 2 on this pole. And I remember reading a book, and every Kwakwaka'wakw artist has it in their collection. It's one of the first ones you get. It's called Kwagayudal Art, and it's from the early 1970s. But it's a good book to get. And when you read it, it says that the Junakwa poles will have a hollow, just a hole for the eyes, representing it's from the spiritual realm. So in the Kwakwaka'wakw side of things, we're taught that when you go into the forest, when you're taught about the bush and the beaches and the waterways, you're taught if you see a Junakwa or hear it, whooping, making its whooping noise, or, making noise in the bushes or throwing things at you, you're to stop, turn around, and leave. And if you see them, you're not supposed to look at their eyes. You're not supposed to disrespect them in any way, shape, or form. And they won't harm you if you don't disrespect them. And you're never to try harm one or kill one. That's the ultimate disrespect. And my father taught me, he said that if you do harm a Junakwa or disrespect it harshly like that, something bad's going to happen to you or your loved ones around you. So as a Kwakwaka'wakw, yeah, that definitely keeps the Junakwa in the spiritual realm. But because I'm also, when I was a small boy, I was, the second youngest cousin of about 30 of us males. And the two of us that were the youngest, me and my cousin Simon James, who was one of the producers of that television animation series called Raven Tales about native legends and stories in like a cartoon setting, but by computer generation. He's, pretty well versed in his legends and stories as well, because our grandfather taught us, because we were too young to keep up to the older cousins, and we're too damn fat to catch them anyway. So we used to get lost in the dust and turn around and go back to my grandfather's house in Alert Bay. But we were blessed to go into the front room and see all of these elders. And out of respect for the families, because their family members are passed, I won't say their names. But I remember sitting with these elders from the different native communities, from up in Kinkum Inlet and Guilford Village and, Hopetown. These are places that our native people were living out of the urban settings of electricity and paved roads at the time in the early 70s. And I remember them talking in Kwakwala language. And then my grandfather would look over my grandmother and go, he was saying this, boy, and he would translate to English. And later on, they picked up enough Kwakwala, I can understand part of it. And I'm not fluent in my language, unfortunately, but you'd hear the stories that came from the different tribes. And I always remember as a kid, asking my grandfather, we called him Dada. Dada, ask him about Junakwa. They got Junakwa up where they live. And my grandfather would ask him, and they'd start laughing. And then all of a sudden, this old man or old lady would just start chatter, 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 chatter. And then my grandfather would look at me and tell me the story. And so right from a young age, I was intrigued by these crest figures that I saw. And I remember in Alert Bay when you used to go to Eddie Wong's candy store and he sold everything else. Alert Bay was a very unique island when I was a child. It had the largest Chinese business section, so Chinatown. It had the largest Chinatown north of San Francisco and Vancouver. And I remember going down to Eddie Wong's to buy candy, and I remember one day it was getting close to sunset. You had to walk the main road between the beach and the graveyard by the hospital. Well, to this day, when you go to Alert Bay, that graveyard is just filled with carved memorial poles from great family members who passed in the last 120 years. But even to this day, you can see the Junakwa carved on these poles numerous times with outstretched arms, big puckered lips, sleepy eyes, and big pendulous breasts and painted black. And I remember being so scared with my bag of candy, and I was pretty much running because I was so afraid of the Junakwa carvings there and the bushes at the backside of the graveyard. You never know what might get you. And, because you're brought up by people telling you, your parents and others, you always remember that Junakwa is always watching you, and she's not allowed to touch you. But if you misbehave and you don't listen to your elders, you act like a brat, you act whiny, you pull temper tantrums, you steal, you don't eat your food, you're misbehaving. The Junakwa has rights to come out to the boat at anchor or to the house where you're at and stick her big hairy arm into the window or the door and grab you and take you deep into the forest to her invisible home. And that's where she's going to boil you up and eat you. So the Junacho was our boogeyman. It was something that was told to the kids. And I told my kids, they're 13 and 16, I brought them up fearing the Junacho. And my daughter even told me just recently, she goes, I was so afraid when you always dragged me into the bushes to go hunting or fishing or to our sea kayak camps, our cabins. She goes, I was always afraid Junacho was going to grab me. And so it's, it keeps the kids in line, but at the same turn, it shows you that spiritual part, yes, is always going to be a part of my life and my beliefs. But then being that young fat kid with black glasses when I was younger, and my cousins teasing me, calling me Dilton Doyle, because I always had black glasses and I always had my head in the book like that, Dilton Doyle and the Archie comic books we used to read. And of course, they used to call me Tommy 10,000 Questions, or else they'd look at me when I was asking my questions. How come? Why? When? Where? Tommy 10,000 Questions. Can't you shut up and quit asking questions? And I've always been inquisitive. I've always wanted to know. And as I studied and everything, and I started looking at, I guess you could say, a natural creature. And then, after meeting Dr. John Bindernagel, who's produced 2 books on the subject, North America's Undiscovered Great Ape was his first one. And he goes to all the conferences, and he's my dear friend. And early 90s, when I had my sighting off my commercial fish boat at that night, that's who my dad directed me to, and I went and spoke with him. And since then, we've been friends, and he taught me the ologist side of Sasquatch Bigfoot. He taught, because he's a doctor. He's got, biologist, and I can't remember his other doctorate. But anyway, he taught me to understand that it could possibly be off the branch of Gigantopithecus. It could possibly be a relic humanoid that we don't know of, and it more than likely came over the Bering Land Bridge back during the Ice Age in 8 days, and taught me things like, looking at the epidermal ridges, and the primates have this type of structure and different things, and you got to research Dr. Meldrum's stuff because he's got things you should know, and you should look at this researcher and study what he's produced. And he brought me into the scientific part. And then that's when I look at what is this creature? The Junacho, the Spookles. Yeah, the Spookles is spiritual. Bar none, it is spiritual. It's from the spiritual realm. It's a small little creature. But I do have that inquisitive side, that curiosity. Could it possibly have been Homo florensis or something like Homo florensis that came across the Bering Land Bridge as well? And then when we look into skunk ape and down in southeast United States, and you see a different blade-type toe on the footprints that are coming out. And now we're just starting to get the information coming from down south in South America. Yet when you Google and research about South America, it blows you away. It's just as diverse, the amount of names and sighting characteristics and footprint patterns, as North America. And there's even stories from Central America. So when you look at it as a whole, is there one creature in the Americas, Sasquatch, Bigfoot? I don't think so. I think if you look at it in a scientific perspective, there could possibly be 4 or 5 different types of critters out there sharing our homelands with them. We know more about deep space than we do the depths of our oceans and our backyards, called the forest, tundra, and deserts of our homeland of North, Central, and South America. So you have to have that open mind. And that's the way, this is my opinion, and that's the way I conduct myself. And that's why when I interview my fellow First Nations and North American Indians, and I just spent a year living up in the Northwest Territories above the 60th parallel, so I was way the heck up there last year. And when I listened to their stories about Naga, when I saw and met with the Inuit and had cigarettes with them in Yellowknife, and they were flying in from all over northern Canada for doctor, medical reasons, whatever. And they're at the hotels, and the company I worked with doing aurora viewing, our buses would go to these hotels to pick up clients. Well, I'd be there waiting for the bus after going into town after work and have pizza or get groceries. And I'd sit there just like all of us North American Indians have done since the dawn of creation, smoking tobacco and shooting the BS. And of course, Tommy 10,000 questions. Hey, up in the Tuktoyaktuk, where you come from, do you know anything about a Sasquatch Bigfoot? Oh yeah, we have 2 creatures up there. And just in the last year and a half, my curiosity about these 2 different creatures is built up even further because of the reports I've gotten when I was in the Northwest Territories and elsewhere. And it's, to me, it's just mind-bending how we know so much about everything else, sciences, and, how to build a microchip to make a computer and a smartphone work so I can talk to you in Las Vegas and you can send it out to people all over the world instantaneously. Yet we don't know whether to call it a relic hominid or North America's undiscovered great ape, a primate, let alone how many of these creatures are out there and what different, I guess you have genus or whatever they call it, what different species category they fall into. And who knows? Maybe the one that they call Yowie in Australia, maybe that's a marsupial and it's not even a primate or a relic hominid. So when you think about it in a big bang perspective like that, you sit in the toilet quite a bit and really think deep. You can come up with things like I've just enlightened you with. Now you guys got to do your research.
Well, that is kind of the point. I guess one of the things that I'm very curious about, Thomas, or should we say birthday Thomas today, birthday boy, is you have the unique distinction of being one of the only Sasquatch researchers who is trying to blend the First Nations history with Sasquatch and mainstream science. How much of a reputation or beating have you taken because you're trying to combine the two, either from your First Nation side or the scientific community?
On the First Nations side, with my own people, I have a second cousin that lives in Alert Bay, and he's my advisor. When we were younger, he could beat me up, no problem, because he's taken martial arts and all that, and he's bigger than me. But he's always been a dear friend and family member. And even though I just turned 52 tonight, and he's a couple years younger than me, to me, he lives in Alert Bay and has lived there all his life. So he's still tied to the elders more than I am, because I've lived outside of Alert Bay, Vancouver Island, Campbell River area. Now I'm in Vancouver and, Northwest Territories. So using him, and plus he's a master carver, so he's always sitting there asking questions and digging more into our culture and history and lore, and he doesn't hold back. He verbally beats me with a 2x4 if I mess up. And, so I use him as advisement. And I also use a chief who's a dear uncle of mine and the chief speaker of my family for as long as I've been alive. And he's also the one that they wrote that book about called The Owl Called My Name, Chief Adam Dick. He's 80-something now, but he's always been my advisor. And I know 3 times he's asked me to be there in the last 6 or 7 months, and I haven't made it. But next time I go to Vancouver Island, hell or high water, I will go sit with him again. And, you have to consult with your people. And, we're humans. We make mistakes. We say the wrong thing. And, yeah, you get beat with a verbal 2x4. That's just the way it is. You don't liberal up and get all whiny Hillary Clinton on everyone. You suck it up, buttercup, and take it like a man. If you screw up, you get reprimanded, plain and simple. You learn from your mistakes. You communicate even more to your people so that you don't make those mistakes. And I know that what I'm doing right now, I have to not run a fine line. I have to stay on that course that, yes, I got to keep consulting even more now with my fellow Kwakwaka'wakw. But with the other First Nations, I know I've heard it from quite a few, and, it's, we don't talk about that subject. That's sacred, and it's all tied to Mother Earth. Great, I respect that. But what are you doing with a protest sign trying to stop going to Standing Rock, or trying to stop an LNG project in coastal British Columbia, or stop a pipeline going down from Canada to the U.S.? give your head a shake. You can't be a hypocrite and blockade industry at the same time hold this stance of sacredness and we don't talk about that. If you're a true protester and environmentalist, then would you not want to share your Aboriginal perspective about a Sasquatch Bigfoot so that in turn, if conclusive proof comes, well, we know what happened in North America, United States of America, and even in Canada when the spotted owl and the marbled murrelet were claimed to be endangered species on the verge of extinction. We lost access to millions of hectares of timber and other resource extraction and mining. So to me, it's, I'm not an environmentalist. I'll never hold a protest sign because to me, it's complete admittance to failure in negotiation and sitting down on the blanket or in the circle and communicating native to non-native to industry to industry to government. And if you got a protest, well, you definitely weren't doing your job as a leader, as an Aboriginal or an Aboriginal yourself. You weren't participating in organizations so that you would see or not see a pipeline or a mine or whatever. So to me, protest is not the way, but at the same time, I think if we do get that, when we do get the conclusive proof of Sasquatch Bigfoot, we're going to see, not because I don't believe in parks, but I do believe in conservancies where we're going to go to the First Nations and get their support to shut down industry in this area for the foreseeable time until we study the Kermode white bear on the central coast of British Columbia. But we're not saying it's shut down to mineral extraction or logging or petroleum extraction or gas. We're just saying we're going to conserve it for the time being so we can know a little more about the genetic uniqueness of this white bear that's not albino. It's something that we think it's something to do with the genes of interbreeding. And then that's where I see with Sasquatch Bigfoot. If the native people come out of that Hollywood, and I hear a lot of them, they take a really far end of the spectrum Hollywood type stance about the spiritual holisticness of something. And then you ask them questions like I do, and you got to remember, I've lived in the bush for over 30 years. I lived in bush, and worked in there, hunting guide, ecotourism operator, watching logging camps in winter when all the loggers went home for Christmas holidays and snow season. And, it's always been my realm, living out in bush. I'm in Vancouver right now in this concrete jungle, and I'm ready to cap one in my head. I'm going crazy down here with this thing called rush hour and all these stinky humans cramming into a bus like sardines. So the bush and the native people, when I question them, and you find out that, I've gone camping a couple of times. Oh, I went on a horseback trail ride one time. Yet they're taking this really heavy spiritual Mother Earthiness, where in truth, they grew up in the concrete jungle, and that's their realm. It's like one of the shows that were on TV, and I just, I'm a fat Indian. I'm an FBI, F and big Indian. That's what it stands for. But when I watched that one show the first time, some kind of show with Sasquatch about 4 years ago, and there was these two big Indians, FBIs, with camo that was screaming. It was so tight on their bodies, if they popped the button, they would have taken someone's eye out 20 feet away. And that was the message to the world as far as Aboriginals and Sasquatch and perspective of Aboriginals in North America. No, that was the wrong message. You got these concrete Indian boys that ate too much pizza, advocating the North American native when it comes to the Sasquatch Bigfoot. And that was just wrong. You need to find, and that's why I've stepped up. I've said, okay, look, I've lived in bushes. I got proof in the pudding. I got pictures upon pictures and things to show people that, I live in concrete, but I've spent the majority of my 52 years out in that bush as an adult. And, and now I'm bringing forth, my experiences, my research into the creature, and hopefully it'll help paint a better picture for the Aboriginal people when it comes to Sasquatch Bigfoot, and maybe in turn the right message will get to my fellow Aboriginal that, unlike those other two boys, and I mean no disrespect for them, they were conveying the wrong message though, but hopefully the other people will go, hey, he's a busher, he's sharing his experiences and his tribal perspectives, maybe we should too. Maybe I should put down this protest sign, and instead of going to Standing Rock, I should go talk with him and maybe go to one of these conferences or send him a smoke signal on the email and say, hey, I'm from this tribe. You're going to have a Sasquatch Bigfoot convention 6 months from now in our state or our province. I was wondering if maybe you'd like the local native perspective. I'd be happy to come share it and talk for 20 minutes. And that's what I want to see happen. You know, I was in the Sasquatch Summit in Washington State in February, beginning of February, end of January. And, you know, I wasn't even a guest speaker. I was up there because I was there with Todd Neese from the American Primate Conservancy. Him and his wife, Diane Stocking Neese, started that organization. I'm a member of it, as also, I think I'm a director, but it's a great organization. It's not about shoot and kill a Sasquatch. It's about getting some conclusive proof, yes, but also having some conservancy areas, protecting its habitat so it can still live as it does. I just heard from someone, when was it? Oh, no, I was on YouTube last night listening to someone's interview recently, and they were talking about how there used to be so many of these Bigfoot around their state, their homelands, but because of all the logging, they don't see them no more hardly. So, you know, I'm not an environmentalist, but I do believe that, you know, these creatures deserve respect. We need to take one or two of the remaining watersheds in British Columbia coastal region that are still pristine and unlogged and leave them that way. Don't make them into a park, because once you make it into a park, us Indians lose our food, social, ceremonial rights and our inherent rights to it. But make it a conservancy, protect it, just so that maybe we can go in there and at least say that we have this watershed that Sasquatch is happy and content because we're not logging it. We're not staying in there with resorts. And I'll give a good example. If you look at northeastern Vancouver Island in Johnson Straits, which is the orca realm in my homeland, and thousands of people go there each year to sports fish, sea kayak, but to see orcas. Well, they have this observation deck on the east side of Johnson Straits, and they look after this closed chunk of water at the mouth of an estuary called the Sitka River that pours from Vancouver Island into Johnson Straits. And it's unlogged. It was left because it's the Michael Big Whale Conservancy area. And they didn't want the whales go in there to rub themselves to remove dead skin or parasites, or just because, like a dog, oh, yeah, it feels good. But there's not numerous, but there's a few Sasquatch sightings that have taken place in there in the last 20 years, since 25 years since it's been a protected area. And I'm starting to see with the work I'm doing as far as migration patterns to and from Vancouver Island and throughout by Sasquatch based upon high accumulation harvest of proteins through different seasons through a 12-month year. I'm starting to see that Sitka River is getting a lot of traffic. And, you know, you can't even go in there and put trail cameras in there because it's a conservancy. It's a whale conservancy. It's highly protected, and you can't go in there and do any studying. So, but you can stay outside of it and take a look with your telescopes and that, and hopefully that'll be an area that will always be a unlogged water system for our Sasquatches on Vancouver Island to use as a jump-off and landing site as they migrate to and from the Broughton Archipelago. There you go.
So we got about 7-8 minutes left with you before we got to hit our first break here, Thomas. When you take both sides of the ledger like you do, which we admit is rare and unique, both the First Nations side and the scientific side, when you look at all of these men of science who are looking after this creature, trying to figure out what the heck it is, how do they react to you when you try to bring in the spiritual? I have had many guests on this show come on and just talk strictly about the science. There's nothing to do with First Nations. Those are just legends that probably shouldn't even be said about the creature. They don't know what they're talking about. Yet here you are trying to blend them. How do you, on a scientific side, what is the reaction that you get from your fellow researchers?
The majority of what I get, well, number one, you got to remember I'm a bushman. You know, no one's going to, you know, you got to be like that, which is Derek Randless, you know, Olympic Project. Now, there's a researcher that can look me in the eyeball and call a spade, and that's why me and him get along so well, because we both are, you know, hard to the core, where the majority of people as a whole, you know, they're liberated. You know, they're not going to look me in the eyeball and go, I don't agree with you, because they have a little bit of apprehension, because they might know that I piss a little higher up the fence post with them, and when it comes to digging in heels or going horn to horn debate, I'm going to rip them a new one in spades and probably poop them out the next day. You know, it's when you're passionate about something as I am, and the mid-ground, and that's the stance I take, you know, if someone comes to me like you just gave an example from, I'd rip them a new one from here to hell and back. You know, it's, you know, you can't ever disrespect the Indians, natives, by saying, you know, they're full of malarkey. But at the same turn, I'm a hardliner anti-woo-woo. You know, I have a Facebook group called Sasquatch Island, and in order to join it, you have to ask to join, and then I go and I scrutinize your wall, and if I see that you're a woo-woo, you know, I generally don't accept your into the group, because I'm so anti-woo. I don't believe in all the orbs and portholes and shape-shifting and mind-speaking and jumping in and out of UFOs and getting through a wormhole going to the next galaxy. You know, that's hokum. You know, I'm taking a mid-ground, but I'm also taking it with a very staunch balance. Yeah, I have my Kwak-Walkie-Walk native legends and stories and culture and spirituality I have to adhere to and honor and always convey and share. But at the same turn, I can't go all holistic Hollywood Indian on it, you know, definitely. But at the same turn, with the sciences side, you know, a good scientist has a well-defined frontal lobe. They're able to look like they're standing inside, floating inside a soccer ball. They have to have that 360-degree spherical look to be a good scientist. Dr. John Bindernagel's one of the few I've met like that. Dr. Meldrum, he's another one that I've met that's like that. You know, they're willing to listen. They're willing to, and, you know, say, you know, I don't support that theory or that your thesis, but here, and then they'll throw in their 2 bits worth, and that's what we have to have more of. You know, it's like the woo-woo side is, you know, it's almost like, to me, the woo-woo side is almost declared war on us that believe it's a living, breathing, bleeding critter like us that every now and then takes a pee like us and squats down and dumps number 2 on the forest floor. You know, I don't think ghosts poop, you know, but I know living animals do. They all do. So that's what I believe in. But at the same turn, when I get the woo-wooers, you know, I tried to be nice to them, like that Keegan Reed. I went on to his woo-woo podcast there a while back, and, you know, this girl named Kat, she was there, and, you know, she's telling me that, oh, yeah, I have pictures of double rows of teeth, and I have pictures of Sasquatch doing this, and at the same turn, they're giving me all this holistic woo-woo stuff about it, how they can mind speak with them or whatever they're going on. And then when I called a spade, I said, well, you just said, I said, now proof is in the pudding. You know, let me see some pictures. Oh, I'll show you pictures, she says, right on the podcast. And then when it comes to bucking up and proof in the pudding, you know, they spoke forked tongue to Tom, because both of them took a staunch that I was the one that was wrong and I was disrespectful by asking for proof. You know, come on now. You know, the woo-woo side takes a little bit of a BS role from when you start putting spades down and wanting to see proof in the pudding. And Bushman rules, commercial fisherman rules, you know, you don't do that. And, yeah, I'm going to rip you a new one. You know, I'd like to go toe-to-toe and debate with Kat and Keegan Reed again, you know, and, you know, call a spade, you know. And like I told them, I said, all you guys got me on your show before was ratings. When it comes to proof in the pudding, you know, they're willing to buck up. No, you don't do that. That's, you know, that's unethical. You show some integrity. You know, number one, we're going to show respect to these creatures. And when you start BSing about them with the type of far extreme woo stuff that they and others do, no, you got to go back to the First Nations, North American Indian rule number 1 about Sasquatch, Bigfoot. We give it respect. We don't BS about them.
We have about 90 seconds left before we go to break. I'm getting a lot of questions of people asking what you mean by woo-woo.
Are you a woo-woo podcast? Woo, I just said it. It's the ones who believe in porthole jumping, turning into orbs, glowing lights in the forest, shape-shifting, mind-speaking. You know, you watch some of these YouTube clips and video clips on TV, and, you know, people apparently talking with them and communicating back and forth. No, come on now. Diane Fossey and Jane Goodall taught us how to do it properly, you know, and these people are just doing it for their 1 minute of fame on social media spotlight. So the woo-woo part is that holistic mumbo-jumbo stuff that you hear about, them jumping in and out of UFOs and making crop circles. You know, it's hokum. You know, I don't mind calling a spade on that. I believe they're living, breathing creatures.
I don't think I'm debating whether or not they are living, breathing creatures. But we'll get into more of that coming up right after this break on Spaced Out Radio. You're listening to Dave Scott with my guest, Thomas Sewid, Bigfoot investigator here in British Columbia. We'll be right back.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
The third Monday of every month, Spaced Out Radio is going to bring you a different look at everything paranormal. Welcome to The Reporters. Jim Mallard, Vanessa Hogel, Denise Garcia, and Christina George join me, Dave Scott, for a look at the weird and strange from the other side of the microphone. We'll break down ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, and the people investigating them. The paranormal media has never been heard like this. Come listen to The Reporters.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. From Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird? Right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up, enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the show, the crypto guru is back, Ronald Murphy. We're going to be talking everything from fairies to gnomes. Yeah, I hate that subject. Goblins, and everything else that is strange and weird being reported around the United States and Canada. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia. Thank you for letting us into your night. We are also live on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live in Las Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio and on Revolution Radio. The Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Sciapidus. Sciapidus is your password for tonight. Make sure you use it wisely, space travelers, because we don't want you getting lost without it. Hey, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. You could also use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio to connect with other members of the audience as well as me. And I like your questions and comments. They're right in front of me. You can also give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. We're also on TalkStream Live, RadioGuide.fm, as well as Stitcher. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can also visit patreon.com, where you can become one of our patrons, and we got some cool swag on there as well. Check it out today. Thomas Sewid is with us. We're talking Bigfoot. He's got his party hat on because it's Thomas's birthday today. So thank you so much for keeping your party hat on for us, Tom. Appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, good to be here. Hopefully someone's going to give me a birthday present tonight and publish something on social media showing conclusive proof of the big fellas.
Yes. Can't we all wish and know? I have no idea. You know, that brings up a good question, my friend, because right before the break, we were talking about all the stuff you call woo-woo, which is, you know, the shape-shifting, the telepathic messages, you know, the portals, UFO connection, everything along those lines. But on a non-woo-woo side, we also take a look at a lot of ideas that people have in regards to Sasquatch. The main reason being, or the main fact being, that really since the Patterson-Gimlin film, which has probably been broken down more than the JFK assassination film, if not as much, there are so many people out there faking videos, faking photographs, putting disinformation out there. How do we know what is real and what is fake on the internet these days?
Oh, just look at what MK Davis produces. He's amazing what he does with his software. I like watching him tear apart videos and that. But I don't know. Like, it's just me. I've seen him myself. So when I look at a video, you know, first thing that Dr. John Brindernagel taught me was, when in doubt, throw it out. But being someone who's seen them, you know, you got to always have an open mind that, you know, different creatures, different regions, possibly different physical characteristics. But from what I saw is exactly what, you know, Patterson-Gimlin filmed. And the Freeman one, I can't say. That one's kind of just, I was questionable on that one just because of the way the fur was laid out. Because Patty and the ones I saw, I'm not saying they were like Chewbacca and groomed, well-groomed, but their hair had placement. And, you know, with Freeman's, you see it's kind of, you know, it's sort of haphazard puffs and tufts and, you know, almost looks like someone with dreadlocks, you know, type of feature with the hair. And that's one thing I questioned on the Freeman stuff. But other than that, it's, you know, the Freeman ones are pretty darn good, you know, and, you know, which I think are the second best. Others I've seen, I really like the one with the one that's running between rocks. I think it's in California. It came out a couple of years back, and it's really crispy clear. And the female Sasquatch has a sort of like a different shaped buttock area, but the hair was well groomed. The facial features were, you know, equivalent to comparable to what I saw. And but then again, I had that, it's too damn good. It must be someone in a monkey suit. So I can see why there's so much debate. You know, I'm just saying that, you know, as someone who's seen them, and even I get like start debating with myself and arguing with the voice in my head, you know, about things. So it, you know, it's just our nature. You know, we have frontal lobes. We're trying to, you know, convince ourselves yay or nay, and we as humans, we take a strong side on either end of the spectrum to yay and nay, and you know, there's where the debates come from. But you know, like I said to someone last night who tried to entice me into a debate, I just said, I'm not going to debate on the subject. I'm just going to do what I'm doing, keep trying to find that conclusive proof. And you know, right away I shut it down. You know, and some of the other fellow researchers commented, you know, here, and, you know, likes and that. So that's what I find when I look for the true researcher. Yeah, debate's good. We have to have debate. We have to agree to not agree. But at the same turn, as a researcher, and that's where I try to, what I look at is, you know, what I call a good researcher, is someone who's not getting into the henpecking, backstabbing, belittling type of debate, but they're being firm Bushman style and, calling a spade and telling someone to shut up when they need to tell them to shut up. But at the same turn, back it up with, look, I got no time for this. I got to go out and concentrate on putting my kit together because I'm leading 21 people out on an expedition this weekend. And that's what I like to call the crispiness of a true researcher. It's someone who's going to dig his heels and head down horn sharp and rip you a new one to defend their beliefs, convictions, and passion, but at the same time be able to do that block and push and say, no, I got to go concentrate on research and I got to go deal with my trail cameras. I have to go and give this talk to this scout camp this weekend. I don't have time for this. So that's what I see, and that's what we need a little bit more of, a little bit more integrity in that path as far as the subject of Sasquatch, Bigfoot.
I want to get to some questions from our audience here because they are starting to pile up. Bob is asking, he's saying, Thomas, I have heard in the past that Bigfoot swims between the mainland and Vancouver Island. He's been spotted from people on BC ferries. Is this normal behavior for a Sasquatch, or was he migrating?
He was migrating. Everything with fur and a heartbeat in my region of coastal British Columbia swims, even the damn snakes. So, and eagles can end up in the water, and they can, if they can't flap themselves out, they will wing swim to get to shore or to a log drifting by. But yes, definitely migrating. Vancouver Island is very unique, and that's why my group that I run is called Sasquatch Island. It was coined for the amount of sightings and on Vancouver Island activity. But now, since I took over the group from my friend in November 2016, just a few months back, it's gotten so popular. And with the podcasts, as you refresh my memory, second time I've been on your podcast, there's so much interest coming. Now I'm talking to people and saying maybe I should have Sasquatch Island be an indicative of all of Turtle Island, which is North America. But anyway, Vancouver Island is very unique, and the reason for is because it's 300 miles long and about 60-something miles wide at the widest. It has numerous inlets on the west side, fjords going into the interior of the island to the halfway, and some even a little further. And then, of course, you have all of the river systems from the high ground of Vancouver Island going 30 miles west, 30 miles south, roughly. And you have a lot of flat terrain, low-lying terrain, and you have such high concentration of protein in given areas through the year. So this is the shellfish time. Actually, we're in the moon of the herring spawn right now. Coastal British Columbia right now has had a 2-day commercial herring fishery for gill netters and large seine vessels. And they're getting the herring for the eggs for the sushi market and the Kusanoko herring roe market in Japan. It's been ongoing all my life and even further beyond. But native, non-native, and Sasquatches and all other critters, they know about the moon of the herring. And they know that when those herring are spawning, you can walk out below your knees as a human, and with your hand, you can reach down into water that looks like someone poured milk in from the sperm of the males as they're going through the frenzy of spawning. And you just start plucking these 20 centimeter, which would be, 10 inches, long herring up and throw them in a bucket. Or if a Sasquatch, just start popping in your mouth like someone opening a can of sardines till your belly's full. So the Sasquatches right now, they've been in the beaches over the winter for the shellfish, the bivalves, the clams, which is native little neck. They're small. The butter clams, the big horse clams, and mussels. And when you roll over the boulders on the beach, you'll find small fish called bullheads hiding at low tide under the rocks and in the tide pools, sea urchins, uni in the sushi markets, eels that are under these rocks. And when you're digging for clams in the soft sands and pea gravels, you're finding these ghost shrimp, which is a type of shrimp that looks like a medium-sized crayfish. And then, of course, you're finding these long worms in the mud. And for an omnivore that needs a massive calorie intake like a Sasquatch, Vancouver Island offers this buffet east-west with only a 60-mile crossing and under 30 miles to get from one saltwater to another. And this time of the year. And then, of course, you got salmon. You have salmon seasons that go through from July through until early part of December in different river systems. And off Vancouver Island, same thing. So you have all these high concentrations of protein. And Sasquatch, there's so many reports of them swimming. And to them, it's just like us walking down a trail. It's jump in the water, swim across. And then one day, you're gone from an area that maybe the herring spawn is over, and now you're coming into an area where the steelhead are heavy in a river, but you have to swim to Vancouver Island or off Vancouver Island. So, yeah. The genetic pool strong, so you're not going to sit there and horse around with all your cousins. You know, you got to go for a swim and go find that new little Sheila over in some other region.
Let's get to another question from Bob here. He is saying, I've never heard about the lifespan of Sasquatch. Is there any way that we could tell how long they live?
Oh, I wouldn't even care to even guess on that. I'd be BSing. No, I don't know.
Do you think they're a long-living creature? They wouldn't be like something like a cougar can live 10 to 12 years in the wilderness, maybe longer. You know, a dog usually has about a 9 to 10 year lifespan. You know, just what would be your ballpark on that?
It doesn't ring a bell, but I remember in Diane Fossey's book and another one on mountain gorillas I read, they gave a line of around, I think it was 30 years, I believe. I know a grizzly bear is like 26 to 32. And so I think, you know, look at the life expectancy in a natural environment for a mountain gorilla, excluding human poachers. And I'd probably give you a pretty good comparison to a Sasquatch. And, you know, that's what I'd put my biscuits on that one on a bet over putting it on. It's more accustomed to us humans. Our average lifespan now is 74 years. Well, right there, you just pooched yourself and screwed your theory, because we have hospitals, we have immunization, needles. I can't say it. My Indian accent got a throat fumble there. But anyway, you can't compare it to a human of 74 years life expectancy, because we know they were susceptible to smallpox. About Indians seeing Sasquatches with smallpox. And we know that the native coastal Indians' life expectancy, they calibrated through the studies that they did long ago. And I remember reading that, and that was around 47 to 53 years old. So, you know, if you're going to come up with a number, if you believe it's a primate, then maybe you go with the mountain gorilla age, life expectancy, and if you believe it's a relic humanid in a non-modern setting, so you might want to go at that level too. So I think that's the best way to give a good guess on how long a Sasquatch will live. Right now, we have a good baseline to work with on Vancouver Island, because someone I interviewed just this winter knows a family member who shot a Sasquatch in an eye, and that was like 6 or 8 years ago. And I have been getting reports in the last 6 or 8 years about a one-eyed, large, male, aggressive Sasquatch. So now we have a good identifier. So maybe, you know, when, you know, I die of my heart problems here in the next 15 to 20, maybe someone will be able to say, hey, that one-eyed Sasquatch is still around. And that's been almost 45 years since it was shot as a mature one. So it gives us a baseline that possibly Sasquatches live as long as a modern human. But then again, hopefully within the next 3 or 4 years, we'll get conclusive proof, and maybe we can start finding out a way of testing them for age. I don't know how you do it with a human. Take a blood sample. Can you tell how old a human is by that? I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
You bring up a very interesting point, that Sasquatch taking a bullet to the eye. There's a lot of people who believe that many Sasquatch have been shot but never killed. Do you believe this animal, creature, whatever it is, can be killed by a rifle?
Yes.
So how come it hasn't been done?
I believe it's been done. I believe that you shoot one and you go public with it, because number one, you're going to phone UCLA and try to see if they still got their 1970s rewards still sitting in a lockbox for a Sasquatch being brought in. You're going to phone Smithsonian Institution and see if they still got their, $1 million they were offering for conclusive proof 15, 20 years ago. And then I used to be a big game hunting guide that worked under Safari Club International booking agents and members. And I had these multi-millionaire, billionaire, gazillionaires coming out as my guests or clients, and I was their hunting guide. And I heard many a time, y'all get a big Sasquatch in your iron sight there, boy, and shoot it. Y'all give me a call, eh? I'd like to buy that and get it taxidermied and put it in my display. I've been to Texas. I've been to other states, and I've seen some of my hunting guide gazillionaires collections blow you away what they got. They got bloody elephants. And I'm not talking an elephant head. They got the whole dang elephant taxidermied, telling me it cost them $60,000 for that. And I've been to the Safari Club International conventions in Reno and Las Vegas that happen every January, and walked to the doors my first time and see an entire herd of elephants like they're going to run me over, all taxidermied. I lifted up rifles that were worth $150,000 custom made. And I had people that were buying our $28,000 American grizzly bear hunts for 10 days like they were buying a bag of popcorn at a movie theater. They didn't even bat an eye that it was costing them $28K. So you shoot a Sasquatch. I know, I know I wouldn't shoot one, but if, like I tell people all the time, I will not shoot a Sasquatch. But if I'm out in the bush, and I always got a gun with me, as a Canadian Indian, under the federal laws with my status card, which is my Indian identification card, I have, under Supreme Court decisions in the law of Canada, I can harvest for food, social, ceremonial purposes anywhere that isn't federal park or private land without permission. So on provincial parks, conservancies, and what we call crown land, or in the U.S. you call federal lands, I can hunt for food, social, ceremonial purposes, 365 days a year, day or night, using a spotlight or jacklight, as some people call it in the States. That's my right. And I'll tell you right now, when I'm out in the bush, I'll never shoot a Sasquatch. I'll never try to shoot one. But if that SOB ever comes at me aggressively, once it gets within 20 feet of me, it becomes food, social, ceremonial, real bloody quick, and I'm pumping in a lot of copper if I got Barnes X. And that thing don't go down, I'm going to be dumping more into that gun, and I'm going to be pumping in more copper or lead into that critter. Because within 20 feet, everything becomes food, social, ceremonial out there. I will squeeze trigger on them because I have to protect myself. That's the number one rule of the bush. You make the other thing die, not you. So with the Sasquatches, yeah, we got to get one in. But when you do get one, the government's going to come in there, and they're going to give you enough money and enough threat and intimidation to hush you up for the rest of your life, because they don't want Sasquatch identified. Once Sasquatch gets onto the radar that it's no longer a figment of people's imagination that we're crazy or smoking something out in the bush or drinking too much of something else, then they all of a sudden have to send out the ologists. They're already doing it in the States. I see there's whoever wants to study Sasquatch in what state parks, you just submit a application. Can you imagine when Sasquatch is on the radar, how many hundreds of millions of dollars Canada and the U.S. will have to spend so that all of the doctors and other ologists can go out there and Diane Fossey and Jane Goodall, these creatures. How many pipelines will be stopped until the Sasquatches are figured out on their migration patterns, how many hectares they need per family group or per individual? So, and then you factor in the Safari Club International Gazillionaire Billionaire Club that want that taxidermy critter. And I even heard one guy who bragged about someone he knew went to Arian Jaya back in, this is 20 years plus, and some little bushman shot him with a blowgun, and he turned his rifle on him and shot him and smuggled him back to the U.S. and had him stuffed and mounted in his collection. Rich people don't care. It's all about the Jones effect, having a bigger dugger than the other guy and a bigger taxidermy collection. So if you're a gazillionaire billionaire and all of a sudden someone phones you up and goes, "Hey, mister, guess what? I shot a Sasquatch. I got it in the back of my F-250. Well, how about I bring it over to your mansion? You take a look." The guy takes a look. He goes, "Look, I'm bringing this down to the university and selling it, but my starting bid is $1.5 million cash on the barrelhead on my hood of my truck." You watch how quick that millionaire goes and gets you $1.5 million and throws it on the hood of your F-250. Not saying it's happened, but I'm just hypothesizing, speculating on that, because I know if I ever did get a food social ceremonial harvest of a critter, do I go sell it to the UCLA or the Museum of Man in Ottawa? No, then I'm on the government's radar, and then they're going to probably make it disappear, and there'll be no conclusive proof. Maybe it's better I go sell it to some Bill Gates or someone who's a philanthropist and wants to protect some environment. He puts it in a case like they do with Lenin and Mao Zedong, and you sell $40 gate fees to go see the critter. Now, you do the math on $40 a ticket, like they do for the Toronto Space Needle and the Seattle Space Needle. $40 a head to get up there and go in an elevator and go up in a big chunk of concrete or steel. Well, they're doing it for a reason, and the Seattle Space Needle has been doing it for almost half a century because there's some serious money can be made with gate fees. So when someone comes out like Dwyer and says that he shot a Sasquatch and I'm keeping it on ice for the time being, what a BS-er. Any human nature, especially when you're the type that is a Sasquatch researcher, we're average Joes that don't have a lot of money. We're not millionaires. We're doing it out of passion when we can afford to, when we're not working 9 to 5. So when you get a Sasquatch, a fellow researcher or a hunter of Sasquatch, we're all basically in the same financial grouping. We're a bunch of crazy buggers that go to the bush too much. But, hey, we're going to get that thing like Mao Zedong and Stalin or Lenin, whoever else is iced in Russia. We want to make some money off it. Buys us a nice F-350 pickup truck with a nice big $80,000 trailer behind it. Now we can do some serious research with all the flare cameras. I'd love to have a $12,000 flare device that records, or FLIR. So there you go. That's my opinion on that.
Let's get to Eric's question here in regards to migration. Have you noticed that the migration patterns of Sasquatch follows the ripening of wild food sources like berries?
Absolutely. May, they start following, in my region only, Vancouver Island coastal, they follow the receding snows up into the high mountains areas because that's where they can get at the marmots, other critters that are up there, the roots, the early fruits and berries that come up there, grasses as well, and leaves, buds. And then they're up in the alpines for May, June. They come down a little bit into the logging slashes, the access, the late June, the huckleberries, and early June is salmon berries and thimbleberries, lower reaches. And then in July, they start going after the late July in some of the northern coastal regions. The salmon are hitting the rivers, so they're going after that. South British Columbia coast, Vancouver Island as a whole, the salmon are coming in May, June, July on the west coast, so they're over there harvesting those salmon. Other ones on the east side of Vancouver Island are already in the alpines, and they'll stay there till mid-August when they'll start coming into the upper reaches of the streams and rivers for salmon. And then the end of September, beginning of October, you start hearing a lot of vocalization in and around the Broughton Archipelago because they're coming off the mountains from Vancouver Island, the higher mountains like on Guilford Island, the high mountains that are on the mainland. And that's when I'm starting to see the different groups coming in and the vocalizations begin, because the clams, we natives call them green between May, June, July, August. No R in the month. You don't eat shellfish that time of the year. There's no oysters north of Campbell River. The water's too cold. So anyway, the shellfish are green because they're filled with photoplankton because of all of the sunlight, long days, May, June, July, August. The clams are so green, they taste like, when you smell a beach at low tide that's green, it smells nasty. Well, when you eat a clam like that, it tastes like it smells nasty. So it's also the time that there's a lot of photoplankton, single-cell creatures called, with a flagellum called goniolix, which is otherwise known as red tide, PSP, paralytic shellfish poisoning. Sasquatches, if, in my opinion, are susceptible to red tide, as we humans are. That's why they're up in the alpines. In modern times, they're also up in those alpines because that's when all the yachters and sea kayakers and hikers are out. So get up in the alpines. That's your high abundance of food source for that 4-month period. And then you start coming down for the higher proteins. Now, that's the pattern that I've seen, that's established, that I've seen after living over 30 years in the Broughton Archipelago. I do know there's some homesteaders. We call one Crease. He's an angry SOB that likes to throw driftwood at boats at anchor and kayakers and tents and shake trees all the time and throw rocks at people. So we've always, people I work with and that, we just refer to him as the homesteader. He doesn't seem to move from this 3-island area of the Western Broughton Archipelago. Lots of shellfish, lots of berries, lots of deer. So I kind of think that's his MO. Maybe he's injured. Maybe he just doesn't like going up into lower oxygen, higher elevation. Maybe he's a recluse. I don't know, but he seems to be a homesteader. But definitely a lot of migration due to high concentrations of protein that's readily available, like the herring are right now as I'm speaking.
Watchdog is asking, Thomas, with your tribal family, has any member of your First Nation ever discovered a body in the past 100 years? I'm just trying to think. Not that I know of. Only thing I do know of is 2 caves. Now, you got to remember Vancouver Island and parts of the mainland off northeastern Vancouver Island are some of the highest limestone karst structure in the world, if not the highest karst structure of limestone in the world. That being said, it's like cheese and hot lead. It's just eaten out underground with all these caves and tunnel systems and rivers disappearing into mountains and reappearing on the other side. And there's 2 reports I've heard, one in my region and one just a little bit further northeast, where people came across caves that had that bed structures, number one, but had very crude, they didn't want to say carvings. They just said rotten wood that was almost like it was shaped into a bird form or something. They didn't call them masks. They just called them forms that were sort of shaped by hand, like rotten wood. And that was really intriguing. But I do know of a southern report, a story that goes back to the early 1900s, where a man went hunting and broke his leg, a native guy, and a Howapwas, a Sasquatch in southern Vancouver Island, showed him a cave where there were dead ones, but they were
almost like they were put into a fetal position, and they were wrapped with ropes of cedar bark. Now, here in coastal British Columbia, the rainforest, a certain time of the year you can peel cedar bark in June, July, and early part of August, and you can make 3-strand rope out of the fiber, like you can do with any fiber. But you can also pound spruce roots, and you can get the fibers as well and make 3-strand ropes. That's what the whalers used to use, and the seal hunters, and what we used to use for rope, period, back in the day, the native people on the coast. And that's what those dead halakwas, what they call their Sasquatch, were pushed into that, formed into that fetal position, and almost like they were cocooned, but not 100% wrapped, so the story goes. Now, my sister sat there with this elderly woman in southeastern Vancouver Island, and she enlightened her about the story of her father going hunting and breaking his leg, and the Sasquatch helping him, bringing him to the railway line miles away. But during this journey, showing them that cave that was sealed with a rock, where the halakwas were hanging on these not baskets, but like cocoon structures, and you could tell they were dead. They were like almost like they were mummified. Well, here in coastal British Columbia, there's numerous graves that are just like that to this day of humans that are laid in bentwood boxes, and which are cedar boxes, and tied with cedar fiber and 3-strand rope made of cedar fiber. So it intrigued me when I heard this story that my sister passed on to me, that she heard from this elder, because my sister, being a Kwakwaka'wakw Cree woman, she knows how to weave to a certain extent cedar bark. And she goes, Tommy, that woman, as she was telling me when we were having tea, we just started talking about Sasquatch. She goes, oh, Louise, I'll show you something. And she got up and she reached up on her bookshelf and she brought down a shoebox. And when she opened it, she goes, that's part of the rope. My father took a piece of it with him. And she goes, Tom, it was just like our 3-strand cedar rope, but the size of your wrist. That's how thick it was. But you could tell it was crude. It still had the outside husk on it. So when you peel cedar bark, when you look at a cedar tree, it has that outside bark. Well, when you peel that strip off, you use a knife and you bend it, and you peel that outside husk until you're left with a beautiful copper-colored inner fiber of the bark. Well, that's how we make 3-strand cedar bark rope. It's beautifully depleted of all the outside husk. Well, the one my sister saw wasn't depleted. I begged my sister to go talk to that woman, but my sister's a concrete Indian. She never got around to it. She was always too busy. And now that old lady, if she's still alive, she was in a home, and she was pretty elderly and feeble. But, God, I'd love to see that piece of rope. And here I would have loved to sat with her and heard the story of her father and the Sasquatches that he saw dead in a cave in southeastern Vancouver Island.
Let's get to another question from our audience here. This one comes from Lori, and Lori is asking, I have heard that Bigfoot has been heard speaking some words in Spanish, Chinese, and even Native American. I think that Scott Carpenter was one of those researchers who said it. Geography and historical events seem to play a factor. Have you ever heard of this, and what are your thoughts?
I've heard from numerous coastal First Nations, as well as some up in Northwest Territories, that if you do see them, look away from their eyes, don't show any aggressive stance, and just talk native to them, that you mean them no harm. Like us, yo, weeksas. It's hello, how you doing? I don't know who you are. That's the context you use. And if you walk down a trail and you see someone, it's Kela Kasla. Hey, how you doing? I recognize you. That context. But and my dad said that too. If you ever have trouble, just start talking Kwakwala to him, our language. So as far as communicating back and forth, I'm out of the room on that one. I've listened to some of them, and to me, I think it's getting a little bit too woo-woo. And besides that, if you've established communication with a Sasquatch Bigfoot to a point that you can communicate back and forth, or, you know, how many people in the United States know how to speak limited Spanish, you know? Even us up in Canada that go to Mexico speak limited Spanish. So if they can speak some Spanish, well, Canadian or American, you know, you got to say, you know, hola, como estás, or whatever, you babble on, or you can maybe understand what they're saying. So I leave that one sort of in the other side of the spectrum towards woo-woo. So in other words, proof is always in the pudding. If you're going to come forth and say, I learned that when you're with the Sasquatch, you have to be submissive and don't sort of droop your shoulders and look away, and don't be threatening, and you reach your hand out just to touch knuckle to knuckle. And if they charge you, you just look away and don't move fast. Don't ever look at their eyes. Well, what I just recited right there is, you know, stuff Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey were perfected with primates in their field of study. So Diane Fossey and Jane Goodall, proof in the pudding. They knew that they needed to get more funding dollars to go to back to the Congo and wherever Jane Goodall was studying. So that being said, if someone's talking to Sasquatch Bigfoot, when in doubt, throw it out. So in other words, oh, so you're communicating. You understand you have some Spanish and maybe some native dialect in there. Oh, that's something. Can I hear the recording? Can I see the video? Can I see the stills? Oh, out of respect, I don't take pictures of them, or there, God forbid, I won't put the video on my phone. I bring my phone up and they get all scared and they run away. Right there, bullshit button gets pushed. That's the way I look at it.
Let's continue on here with our questions from our audience here in hour number 2 with Thomas Sewid. Eric is asking, how do you explain, Thomas, Eric's encounter when he heard a knock on a tree, was in perfect sight when to the tree, and nothing was there? Nothing walked back of him, nothing walked around him, and this creature, whatever it was, did it again as if it were mocking him. What do you think?
Did Eric look up? You know, Harry and the Hendersons, when you see Harry up the tree, there's a reason why you see that. That movie, they consulted with the local Indians about that, characteristics of a Sasquatch. So when I go hunting, I'm swivel necking, yes, because I'm hunting. But I'm also looking up and definitely behind. So right there, it's easy to say, I heard a knock. I looked all around. I didn't see anything. I've been in the bush with many a person that spends more time in concrete than bush. They never look up. And the other thing is, they blend so well. Like one of the native stories about how they were hunting in an estuary, which out in coastal British Columbia, we have these big maple trees. And unlike most of the other trees, they're really, really chocolate brown. And they're usually in an estuary setting where the maple trees got such a splay of branch compared to the evergreens that are indicative of our coast. Well, they block all the sunlight out. So underneath the maple tree groves, and it's open. It's good deer hunting area. And that's what these two natives were doing. And they're walking through this estuary, swivel neck and rye, trying to look for what they're hunting for. And all of a sudden, they smelled Wallace Yachbala, a real big stink. So they went back to back. That means you both have a 180 degree radius that you check. Your partner's doing the one behind you. And that's when one of the partners goes, hey, take a look over there. And when they looked, there was this maple tree, and he goes, see it? And that maple tree was just doing like a maple tree does, standing there, but splayed with its arms and its body sort of bent and its legs all flayed around, was this brown Sasquatch pressed into the bark. So it was not given a silhouette, and it was standing there not behind the tree, but splayed into it, looking at them. And when both the humans looked at this Sasquatch, it was looking at them, and it just smiled, made a big grimace, stood up, walked deep into the forest. So when you hear a wood knock, we're taught, stop, turn around, go right back where you came from, get the hell out of there. That Sasquatch telling you that my family's here, I don't want you here, don't come any further. So when you hear a wood knock, they're warning you. That's why I don't wood knock, because why would I go out in the bush to try to look for Sasquatch and start banging on a tree telling them to stop, turn around, go back where you came from, I don't want you here. You know, case in point, BFRO, beyond a shadow of a doubt, they've proven that wood knocks, you don't see Sasquatch. We haven't seen one yet in 6 seasons on their show. So there you go. So when Eric had his encounter, go back to Eric and ask him, did you look up? How big were the trees? Were they 4 feet or thicker in diameter? Did you look for any of them splayed or pushed into it, or a tree peeking on you? You know, as a researcher, investigator, Sasquatch, Bigfoot enthusiast, you got to be able to ask those questions. You don't just ask the basic ones. Ask ones that I'm teaching you in this podcast and did in the last podcast when I was here. There you go.
Let's get to another question. This one comes from Joe. Joe is saying, I can just get this unblocked on my Facebook here. He is saying, last night he was in his driveway and whistled for the dog that was in the garage. One short whistle. He got a reply from the woods. One short whistle. This happened twice. The dog wouldn't come out of the garage. Is it common for Sasquatch to mimic people like that?
I can't say yes. I won't say no, because I did hear them whistle chirping when I had my encounter, and I heard them before whistle and chirp, another time whistle and chirp. Then all the reports about them whistling. Mimicking-wise, I don't, it's not in the Sasquatch's best interest to be mimicking humans and jesting with us. You got to remember, these are omnivores that require a lot of protein, and they have perfected being North America's greatest hide-and-go-seek champion. And they've proven that they don't want to be found. So that being said, mimicking like that, it's not in their best interest. It doesn't it doesn't adhere to their MO, their modus operandi. So, juvenile's a juvenile. We hear the reports of juveniles acting like juveniles do. So I could see it in that context. You know, what do you call it? Kids are kids. Look at a raven. They'll mimic whistles. And, you know, they're full-grown raven. They always act and having fun. So that's what I think on that anyway.
Mm-hmm. Let's get to another question here. This one comes from Gail. Gail is asking, with all of the Alaska Marine Highway ferries constantly sailing the Inside Passage, along with all the fishermen, wouldn't it seem likely Bigfoot would have been seen swimming across the water?
No. They have too much intelligence. Number one, their eyes reflect light. We know they're nocturnal. And First Nations coastal stories from Alaska all the way down to Northern California. Nocturnal activity. Sighting reports in modern day and ancient nocturnal activity. They don't want to be seen by us. They don't want to be found by us. They don't want to communicate with us. And the reason being is, think of all the nasty diseases we've passed on to them. You know, Spanish flu, influenza, tuberculosis, smallpox. And think of what they've seen us do, you know, clear cutting, strip mining, removing mountains for mineral extraction, rivers devoid of life because of pollution. You know, the list goes on. You know, we're the filthiest creature on this planet. We'll defecate where we'll harvest our food, and we'll even feed our food fecal matter so that we get a cheaper prawn or shrimp in our Walmart grocery store. Humans are the parasite. They know that. There's a reason why they're so elusive and they don't want to be near us. And, you know, ferries going up the inner pass. I've been a commercial fisherman all my life in coastal British Columbia. I spent a lifetime going from Vancouver Island to basically the fishing ground right at the border between British Columbia's coastal region and Southeast Alaska's Panhandle. I have never seen a grizzly bear, but they're there, swimming back and forth in the islands. So people on ferries coming, you know, the natives, the Kwakwala term for sailboat is Kwikwikwinala, thunderbird, because of the sound of the sails when they used to go up. Whoomp, whoomp, whoomp. It's like a thunderbird flapping its wings. You have thunder. So that name tells you that the first Kwakwakiwak that saw sailing ships were totally flabbergasted at something so big with big sails on them. So if my people were like that, there's your proof that, and I've seen cruise ships go up and down Johnson Straits. I've been a bear hunter stalking a bear on a beach on one of the islands in Johnson Straits, and all of a sudden you see the bear look up. Didn't hear us or smell us. I was downwind and there was a little bit of breeze, but it looked up and it saw this monstrosity white cruise ship coming around the point not 3 miles away, and it DD'd off that beach. So that's why people on cruise ships don't see Sasquatches. That's why people on commercial fish boats, sports fishing boats, have very rare encounters of seeing a Sasquatch on the beach. There's a lot of reports over the decades, but, you know, there's not an astronomical amount because they can hear and see what's coming, and they get the hell out of there.
Let's get to Deb's question at hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. She is a brand new listener, so thank you, Deb, for taking part in this show. Night number 2 for you. She is asking, do you believe that Bigfoot could be a human spirit hybrid being? That would go along the lines of the Bigfoot being seen as giants of the scripture, the offspring of angels and humans, sons of God and daughters of men, as outlined in Genesis 6:4. What do you think?
I'm going to plead the fifth on that one. Seriously, I'm going to plead the fifth on that one. No comment.
All right. Let's get to Dennis's question. How do you reconcile your research with those other Native Americans and First Nations who don't like you talking about Bigfoot?
Number one, it has to be spoken about. You look at all the tribes, you know, it's easy to judge. You know, I don't judge 268 tribes with casinos. You know, I don't judge the tribes out here, what we call bands in British Columbia and Canada. I don't question or condemn the bands that have liquor store sales on their reserves. I don't condemn the ones that have bingo palaces. I don't condemn the ones that allow box stores like Walmart and Home Depot and Superstore and Canadian Tire to come onto their reserves. It's easy to condemn. As far as stuff with Sasquatch, Bigfoot, you know, I imagine if I went to Standing Rock 4 months ago and stood up and said, hey, y'all, I want to share with the world the Kwakwakiwak and other First Nations perspectives that want to work with me and share their information about Sasquatch, Bigfoot, so that hopefully we can, you know, come up with conclusive proof of the existence. And I really do think we need to get the native components in there so that when it comes to the spiritual side of skinwalkers, shape-shifting, and other aspects from other tribes, it should come out. And then that way, you know, we can get our story, whether it be spiritual or natural, get both sides out and share our spectrum of knowledge when it pertains to these creatures. And how many of those Standing Rock protesters would start throwing rocks at me because you're talking about something so spiritual, so this. Yet I think it's, you know, I'm not supporting them, what they do, but right away they're jumping at me because I'm doing this. So, yeah, it's so easy to judge. But the bottom line is, it's our culture and heritage. Like I had someone call me, Tommy, the tour whore, you culture vulture. How can you share stories about Sasquatch, about Junakwa? You're making money off it. Well, yeah. www.hamumuadventures.com, HAMOOMOO adventures.com is my tourism company with my partner in life. And her and I, we do Seattle and Victoria and Vancouver Sasquatch safaris. Yeah, we're making money off it. But we also do multi-day adventures into the rainforest of the Pacific Northwest, be it on a boat, kayak, or getting dropped off and doing a Sasquatch survival course where we bring no food in there other than emergency rations that we don't touch. But we live and eat like a Sasquatch in different seasons, just so people can have a better understanding about these creatures in the bush world. Yeah, I'm making money off it. So, yeah, I guess I am a culture vulture. But at the same turn, I look at them and I say, when they throw a question at me about how can you commodify our culture and heritage, oh, come on now, give your head a shake. When the first sailing ship came to North America and dropped a rusty anchor in some bay we don't know about, because we can't even figure out who was the first one who found North America. I believe it was the Chinese long before Christopher Columbus, who didn't even come to North America, and Leif Erikson. And so there was canoes going out.
I'm going to get you to hold on right there. We're going to finish up this story at the other side of the break because we can't miss a break. We got to get out of here for the time being. Thomas Sewid is our guest tonight. We're talking Bigfoot, 2 hours down, 1 hour to go with the British Columbia researcher from Vancouver Island. We'll be back right after this.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all.
Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Space Out Radio's news director for the SOR Space Flyer. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spaceoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
A child grew up too fast, went running wild. Now we don't know who to pray to anymore.
Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, the Crypto Guru is back. Ronald Murphy. We're getting into the land of the Fae. We're getting into gargoyles, goblins, even gnomes. I can't stand the gnomes, but that's okay. We're getting into it, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time, tomorrow night at spacedoutradio.com. We are also live on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Newton, Georgia. We are also live in New Orleans on 107.7 FM on the United Public Radio Network in over 160 countries around the world. We're live in Las Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio and on Revolution Radio. The Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Sciapetus. Sciapetus is your password. Also a good Scrabble word score. Sciapetus. Make sure you use it wisely. Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night on this show. Hey, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. We're also on Stitcher, TalkStream Live, and RadioGuide.fm. And our website is SpacedOutRadio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for a total of $5 a month. Thomas Sewid is our guest tonight. We are talking Bigfoot in British Columbia. That's where we broadcast from. Thomas, welcome back.
Yep, nice to be back on.
I want to get to some more questions from our audience because they continue to pile up here, my friend. Eric wants to know if you have ever heard any good vocalization recordings, maybe the Ronald Moorhead tapes, and what your thoughts are on those.
Actually, I went out with Ronald Moorhead. He was on Operation Sea Monkey with us in the beginning of October last year when we went in a friend of mine's boat into the Broughton Archipelago looking for the creatures and trying to hear the vocalizations. But he played his Sierra sounds, and those long, drawn-out, roaring ones, those I've heard. Those are indicative of what our people talk about with Junakwa, with the whoop, whoop, whoop noise. And then hearing what do you call it, those ones that sort of like a chattering whoop that just goes and goes like a warble in there in the voice. I've heard those. Those are what similar to what we've heard and here in our area. When we had them in the spotlight that night, they were doing whistle chirps. And it was like they were communicating back and forth, that male and female. The female went further into the bush, and the male, over about an hour and a half, 2 hour period of the incident, it came around the bay, going in and out of the bush. And every time it came out of the bush onto the beach again, in the moonlight, we could see the shadow. And then when it got right parallel to our boat, about 60 yards away, you could really make out the bipedal features and how bloody big the thing was. And when it went back in the bush after it checked us out and scared the hell out of us, it made a high-pitched whistle chirp. And then there was a higher-pitched whistle chirp identifying where the other creature was. And it sounded like it wasn't being in stealth mode no more. It walked through what we call salal. It's a real thick, leafy bush that just like steel wool in between the trees here in the coast in some areas. And it sounded like a D8 cat going through there. Like it was like a elk or a moose type of crashing noise as it walked through the salal. And then the second incident, when I heard them, it's like that one in that Native Indian reserve, the police officer, I think it was back in the 70s, he recorded that one where it's screaming. And that one, that's pretty cool, because I've heard a lot of people talk about that's what they've heard throughout Vancouver Island.
Let's continue on with Eric's question here. He says, do you believe Sasquatch are strictly hunter-gatherers?
No, because us native people in coastal British Columbia were not and are not hunter-gatherers, because we had so much protein. And we still do. Like, picture 20 miles of beach line that looks like someone's poured milk in it this time of the year, and the water goes that milky color. And when you stand there in your boots and you're looking down, it's just rolling with herring, thousands of tons. Like, I believe the Federal Department of Fisheries and Ocean guesstimated that there's 50 some odd thousand tons of herring spawning right now as we speak on central eastern Vancouver Island in around the Comox to Nanaimo region. So that's a lot of protein. So the native people, we used to move our big houses, load all of the hundreds of cedar planks onto 4 or 5 canoes, like a big barge that you see going down the Mississippi or up the eastern seaboard or down the west coast of North America. And with all of our possessions and our family members with extended paddles and a cedar bark sail, we would journey 10, 15 miles, even up to 80 plus miles to rivers at the head of inlets during the end of mid-March through until the end of April, harvesting a fish called an ooligan, like a smelt, that just turns those glacier-fed rivers black with so many ooligans coming from the deep salt water to spawn in these glacier meltwater rivers at the heads of inlets. And then in May, you have these massive low tides in the daytime that expose abalone and shellfish and sea urchins and starfish and tide pools filled with crabs and other creatures. Haida Gwaii, which used to be called Queen Charlotte Islands. I've been there in June with my children in a tidal pool that was probably half the size of a football field that had thousands of Dungeness crab from 5 inches to 6.5 inches on their backs that were in there for the mating season. And when you go out of that tidal pool onto this beach called North Beach, which is about 28 miles long, and you walk with chest waders in 2 feet of water with a dip net, it's just scurrying with brown, orange Dungeness crabs coming in. And then going to the rivers that you can literally walk across the backs of salmon spawning, and low tides where you can go down with a pitchfork with 4 tines and get on your knees and start digging in the sediment. And in 1 cubic meter, within 10 minutes, produce over 40 pounds of shellfish as big as a man's hand. And then you go to areas that are just miles upon miles of huckleberries or salmon berries. You can go to abandoned native villages or estuaries where there's fruit trees, crab apples, acres of crab apples. And then, as Dr. John Bindernagel put in his first book, and it was one of the first ones I had ever read, about a person witnessing a Sasquatch with a stick off eastern Vancouver Island harvesting ducks in the water, where sometimes you can look at these beaches that are just covered in ducks, like on a big southeast storm in the fall. The teal ducks will be standing there at nighttime on the beach with their heads shoved under their wing, and you can walk out with a stick and start smacking them upside the head and harvest an onion sack full of teal ducks without a gun. And then you look at the pictures we have of polar bears and grizzly bears going on to seal and walrus rookeries and taking out an animal to eat. Well, you can look at the islands around coastal British Columbia, and they're covered in non-indigenous invasive species called the California sea lion in the thousands. You can see rookeries with over 500 stellar sea lions. You can see seal rookeries all over the place. Rats with flippers because they're overpopulated. Their numbers have exploded in the last 30 years. So as humans, that's what we always harvested, what I just named. Well, as Sasquatch, he can and she can still harvest like that. So we're not hunter-gatherers. We're migrating gatherers. You know, it's not hunting when you go out and start clumping 30 teal upside the head and fill an onion sack. That's harvesting. That's not hunting. Hunting is stealth and creeping and sneaking. You know, there's so much food in coastal British Columbia. There's a reason why the Kwakwaka'wakw have a term, a name, Hiladi, the land of plenty. And that's where I live. Not right now. I'm in this concrete jungle with too many noodle shops called Vancouver. But there you go on that question.
Another question. This one comes from Mike. He is asking, Thomas, have you ever had any experiences in the Klemtu area of the BC coast?
Yes. I filmed a show that I was a host of called Aboriginal Adventures Canada. You can YouTube that one, and you can see clips. So I dress up in West Coast Kwakwaka'wakw attire, and I used to go interview my fellow Aboriginals. Klemtu was one area I went to because I'd gone there numerous times commercial fishing, and I fished all through that area, East Higgins Pass, Oscar Passage, Kynoch Inlet, trying to think of the other name of the place. But in that area, Klemtu, I've sat there and talked to the people, and that's why I went and filmed one of my episodes there. I wanted to talk to some of the guys from Klemtu and some of their reports, and they have amazing reports from Klemtu that I've heard, and they're very guarded about sharing any information on that. Les Stroud was there, of course, and he just touched on the dancer of the Bus in the Big House on one of his shows. I don't think they gave him permission to actually show, like I did in my television series at the time, the dancers in that big house. And Les, when he was there, when I was looking at everything, I believe he was in the wrong area. He should have been at that time of the year on the beaches, because you could tell it was cold. So it wasn't summertime when he was there. So that time of the year, he should have been in a salmon river, which is Klemtu proper. There's a big salmon river right there. Or he should have been in one of the shellfish beaches, like just over the hill from Klemtu is East Higgins Pass. And there's been 3 sightings I know of in there. Sasquatch is on the beach harvesting shellfish. So, yeah, I know Klemtu area well. Actually, I know the whole British Columbia coast well. I've been a commercial fisherman all my life, hunting guide specializing in bears, and used to be a water taxi tour boat owner for many years. So I've poked around a lot of the coast, and Klemtu is one of my favorite places. The Kitasoo Heihei First Nations traditional territories.
Moving on here, Eric has a question. What purpose does keeping all of the folklore a secret serve? Once a people die off, all of that precious knowledge dies with them.
I loved creative writing when I was younger, and I told myself when I was a teenager, late teens, that I was going to not settle down with family until I was 35, because I was going to go carpe beepin diem. I'm not going to use that beepin word on the radio, but seize the beepin day. I was going to go places that most people would never go. I was going to do things that most people would never do, and if they contemplating doing exactly what I was going to do between 16 and 35 and 52, they would probably pee their pants. I sit in the city and I look at these people walking like a bunch of sheep, sipping my coffee on the table outside of Starbucks because they smoke cigarettes. And I think to myself, and have for many decades, oh, if they could only have experienced a little bit of what I have in life. Because I told myself that all my life I was going to carpe beepin diem. And when I was 52, I was going to start writing everything down. So as I've enlightened on Sasquatch Island, my Facebook group, as I've shared on Thomas Sewid, my Facebook personal page that I have friends with, I am going to do exactly that. I actually sat down tonight and started the first paragraph of what will be, hopefully, a decade of writing and putting everything that I can think of and experienced and heard or listened to down into text so that it will be ongoing. But in all honesty, if you do search, and you got to remember, I was born an Indian. I became First Nation, a Native. Then I became a First Nations. Then I became an Indigenous person. And Lord knows what I'm being told. I got to call myself by my tribal affiliations. So I'm a Kwakwakiwak, Mamliacha, Klekosidinuk, and the Cree Mistawasis First Nation. So I was born an Indian, and my life, up till now at 52, my name, terminology of who and what I am has gone through all of these different changes. So that being said, when you search, don't just keep it generic to Indian, North American Indian, North American Native, Indigenous North American. The list goes on, First Nation, Aboriginal. Do your searches. And if you research enough, you will find out that a lot of our stuff is there forever. Come to coastal British Columbia and Pacific Northwest. Go to the Burke Museum and see the Kwakwakiwak Junachwa carving holding a klakwa, a copper, in its hands, standing some 24 feet high in front of Seattle's Burke Museum at the University of Washington. Pay the gate fee and go inside and see a rock-carved Sasquatch Bigfoot in the first display case. Go downstairs and see the Sasquatch carvings that are mostly Kwakwakiwak. Go downtown Seattle and see the Sasquatch carvings, Junachwa, and everything else that's in their museum down there. Go to Victoria, to the Royal British Columbia Museum, and see all of the Sasquatch carvings. Come to Vancouver Island, which is the highest concentration of Sasquatch carvings in wood on Earth. It will, as a Sasquatch enthusiast, Bigfoot enthusiast, coming to coastal British Columbia, Pacific Northwest, Vancouver Island, and not just coming for 4 days and seeing Victoria, but actually coming here for 10 days or a week and explore. You will find places with Coast Salish Sasquatch carvings, Kwakwakiwak Sasquatch carvings. Mackay, I believe, even has some in the Olympic Peninsula. Go to Haida Gwaii, go to Prince Rupert and see the Shimshan peoples. Haida Gwaii, of course, is the Haida people there, and see their Gogeet carvings and masks and other things. Coastal British Columbia is Sasquatch Central because of all these carvings and everything. But if you research on the internet and the archives and the libraries, you will find that chiseled forever in text is the lore, the history, the culture, the heritage, the beliefs of Sasquatch Bigfoot to numerous coastal First Nations that are there forever.
I love Dennis's comment here. His question to you, Thomas, is this. Have you ever heard of any albino Bigfoot sightings?
Just what I've read in the books, 1 or 2. That's it. I've never ever heard of any myself.
I would love for you to get into your personal sighting that led you on this journey.
Scared the hell out of me. My table was turned. I was the hunted. I was no longer a hunter. And, you know, I'd seen them anchored out in the bay with my girlfriend at the time, my 2 crewmen, one of them native, one non, both of them bushmen like myself at the time, but we were young, 20s. Heard something on the beach, put the spotlight on. You know, it's a commercial fish boat, 60 feet long, so it's a good spotlight, you know. And there was 2 of them. One dropped to their knees, like I said earlier. The other one went in the fetal position. Turned the light off, put the motor on because we had the spotlight on for over 20 minutes. I didn't want to deplete my batteries in case I had to get out of there. After an hour running the motor, shut it off. My non-native crewman was sleeping. My girlfriend was sleeping. Me and Dean, this native crewman, went outside and listened. And lo and behold, we could hear it walking across the bay, you know, going across the boulders and the mud. And then took it about maybe half an hour to come right beside the boat. Amazing encounter. And then when I came out of the bush, after the commercial fishery, I went and seen my uncle in Alert Bay and told him what happened. He just laughed. He goes, you know the name of that place? Because that beach was where I went in 1989 and put a 26-foot trailer when I was appointed as the tribal watchman for our abandoned native village for a summer tourism project. So that's where we saw them, was walking in front of the trailer at first. And when I told my uncle about it, he'd laugh, and he goes, you know the name of the bay that you put your trailer? I said, yeah, it's native Anchorage. He goes, no, a native name. And he referred to it as the place of the Junakwa. And, it's just, I guess they're going into the abandoned native village at the end of September, beginning of October, because of all of the apple trees. I think there's crab apple trees, plum trees, and then all the what do you call those things? Blackberries that are in there. And of course, all the tourists are gone now. They don't go in there during the daytime to see the fallen totem poles and big house remains and history, because this village of ours is very, very famous. It's called Mamalalakula, Village of the Last Potlatch, a name that is totally wrong because it's not Mamalalakula. It's Mimconleys. Manuyacha is our tribal name of our people that are from there and used to live there. And as far as Village of the Last Potlatch, it's hardly that. It was a site of a potlatch in the early 1900s that saw almost 30 of our people sent to prison for breaking the Canadian anti-potlatch laws, and it saw our entire nation stripped of hundreds of pieces of treasure, masks, costumes, talking sticks, batons for drumming, copper shields called klakwa. It was a devastating blow to our culture and heritage, what took place there in 1921, I believe it was, in the early 1920s. And we have two cultural centers in our territories, one in Cape Mudge across from Campbell River called Numbalis, and the other one up in Alert Bay in our north central part of our territories called Umitsta, the return of something precious. And if anyone does want to research about our beliefs towards the Junakwa and Bukwus, go to umitsta.ca, ISTA.ca, and you can spend a couple hours researching that website, and hopefully on your bucket list you'll add go to coastal British Columbia and make a stop at those cultural centers, because they're definitely well worth seeing. Umitsta has a big, huge Junakwa carving right outside the museum, cultural center.
You were going to tell us a story that hasn't been told yet in regards to someone being attacked by a Sasquatch recently.
Good, we got half an hour. It won't take that long. So I had to move to Vancouver to take a job to make some money. I'm hunter-gatherer for money. That's what I do. The only hunter-gathering aspect of my life. So here I am in the concrete jungle. And, of course, I miss my being out clam digging this winter, which I didn't get a chance to do hardly. Going out exploring, putting trail cameras up, just tracking in the snow because we have such a big winter. So here I am working in the 9 to 5 in the rat race of Vancouver. And, of course, being a bushman on my lunchtime where I work at Granville Island, there's a lot of seafood shops. So I'm poking around, looking at them, looking at the different shellfish. And there's this Asian boy loading clams in big, huge sacks out of a truck. So I start talking to him, and he's telling me how his family have been shellfish harvesters since they got here from Vietnam over 25 years ago. And he was brought up clam digging throughout the coast, and they have clam leases and so forth. So I asked him, I said, well, you guys out there digging all the time, and most of our tides are at nighttime, middle of the night. So I asked him, I said, you guys ever encounter Sasquatch or Bigfoot? And he just stopped. He looked at me. You know about him? And I said, well, yeah. And I told him my history, and he said, yeah, I know. Well, we've never seen them, but we've had noises that we know aren't animals out there that we know of. And my cousin, he quit clam digging a couple of years ago, and I quit too. I don't go digging no more out in those areas. I said, why not? And he's kind of looking around, and his older family members are in the shop, and we're outside. So you could tell he didn't want them to hear what he was going to say. And he goes, I wasn't there, but they were digging on a beach. And he goes, you know what cockles are? And I'm like, right away, and a red flag went up, alarm. Cockle is said to be the favorite food of the creatures. when we go to a clam beach, and if you hear noises like trees being pushed over, rotten trees, I mean, and, whooping or chirping, you throw cockles above the high tide mark. And it's because it's their food. It might be their beach. But anyway, the cockle is a type of clam, but it kind of looks like a scallop because the riffles on the shell go from the back hinge to the forward part. But these cockles, you can't put a butter knife in there or a knife and clean it like you would a normal clam. You have to either steam them so they die and open up and you eat them. And the meat inside looks like a big shrimp prawn tail. And the taste of a cockle is in between an abalone and a prawn and a little bit of clam taste to it. It's a delicacy, but it's not, I don't think it's legal to dig them and sell them in seafood stores because they're they're not rare. They're just not in high abundance. And it's indigenous, native coastal people's delicacy. And I know we Kwakwaka'wakw don't want anyone clam digging in our traditional territories and harvesting cockles for money. We harvest them for food, social, ceremonial purposes. And I see a little bit of trading on the internet over them, but cockles are absolutely phenomenal to eat. And they're like a big, huge potato. They're pretty big. So anyway, when he mentioned that, well, we were out harvesting cockles, I knew right there Vietnamese were shunned upon about 20 years ago because they were coming into our territories and they were digging like a rototiller went through our shellfish beaches and taking everything. That's not our way. Even when we commercial dig, we don't do it like that. You always leave some for other generations. Well, as soon as you mentioned them harvesting cockles, I knew it was what I'd heard about and seen evidence of before, the black market cockle diggers that go out and just strip cockle beds. And we go to dig cockles. And I remember I went to one of my beaches a couple of years ago that I'd always dug at all my life. And you don't even dig, you rake. And I raked for about an hour and I got like 3 cockles. And I thought, what the hell? Someone had gone in there and just decimated that cockle bed. And that's BS. You don't do that kind of disrespect to nature, to our food sources. So this young fella tells me, yeah, we were digging cockles. And right away I just went with it. Oh, yeah. I said, we do that too. I said, oh, where were you guys? He goes, oh, we're all through the coast hitting cockle beds. And I thought, you slimy son of a bitch. No wonder why you guys could have the seafood market down here. You guys black market and pirated and raped and pillaged to make your money. So anyway, he tells me they were digging this one beach for cockles that they'd been to before, a few years beforehand. And they heard shaking the bushes, and they just kept digging because he said, "Boy, we're getting a lot of cockles. We just want to keep going and going." And all of a sudden, sticks started being thrown at them, and his cousin grabbed one of the sticks, pieces of driftwood that was thrown at them, and he went running up towards the bush line, and he threw that stick back in the bush. And then all of a sudden, you heard him screaming, and the guys ran up to see what he was screaming about, and he was lying on the beach holding his left leg, and there was a big rock size of a cantaloupe. So the big fella, they were pissed at those guys. They knew what was going on, raping their cockle bed, their food, their favorite food. And when that guy showed aggression and disrespect and threw that stick towards the bush, one of them in the bush just grabbed a rock the size of a grapefruit and probably wung that thing out like a laser beam and took him out at the upper leg above the knee. And I said, did it break it? And he goes, it wasn't broken, but boy, he couldn't walk, and it was all black and blue when they got back to the city. And that's the first, I just heard about this last week. But, I'm not going to say their names or anything or who they are, but I'm definitely going to spread word to my people, especially the native guardians that patrol our territory. And year-round, I'm going to tell them who these people are and what company they have, and maybe I'll find out what boats they have and get pictures, because this cockle poaching's got to stop. And as we can see from Sasquatch Bigfoot, they don't condone cockle poaching either. So that's the newest one I've heard, newest report. It's a damn good, interesting one, too.
With the sighting that was recorded this past weekend near Tofino on Vancouver Island, where a fisheries officer actually came forward and said that he's the one who saw it on the beach. It was sitting on a fallen log, and then it just seemed to, when his boat came by, it seemed to get up and walk away. It's very rare that we have a government official, especially one of nature, like a fisheries officer or a natural resources officer, to actually come out and state publicly that this is what they saw. How rare is this in Canada for this type of story to come out publicly?
It's pretty rare. I know I've heard a lot of second-hand, third-hand stories of people in forestry, Ministry of Forest, Ministry of Environment, conservation officers. My father was a career Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans biological technician, so he worked with the biological side that were out in the field as well as the enforcement side. But one of his comrades at work, he came around the corner on the van, going to and from work with fisheries just north of Campbell River, and mid-afternoon saw a Sasquatch put its arm up in front of its face, kind of squat down, and just take three big strides across a highway and jump 20 feet down a bank and disappear. He's still, to this day, I know him well. I grew up with this guy, and he's just like, Tommy, I'll share my story, but don't tell him my name. He's retired now, but he doesn't want it known. So it's not, it's rare for them to come out, but it's not rare for them to have sightings. And you talk to people that live in the Broughton Archipelago that have lived for over 10 years. Over 85% of them will have had an incident or more with these creatures. And when you tell me 10,000 questions like me, and you're, talking to people, and you just outright ask them, hey, you got any stories about Sasquatch? You see it around? They look around, and if no one's listening, they generally, yeah, as a matter of fact, whether it's them or someone they know. But you can't use the term for coastal British Columbia, Vancouver Island especially, rare, because it's not rare. It's like I say, if you spend enough time in the bush, you will see a white black bear out here in our region. Magic of the internet, I'm seeing white moose, white humpback whales down around Australia, white orca up around Russia, eastern side, white this, white that. If you spend enough time in bush, you're going to see something white, is now what's coming to be. So albino Sasquatch, maybe it's like the Kermode bear around Clem 2, which they call spirit bear, a genetic anomaly, or maybe it's just like me, if I don't dye my hair with Just for Men, I'm white as the man from Glad. So age makes you white. So yeah, there's more than likely, with the reports you've heard of white Sasquatch, if you spend enough time out in the bush, you will see something white. But you spend just a little bit above normal bush time in coastal British Columbia, and especially on Vancouver Island, you're going to see the Sasquatch. You're definitely going to hear it. And, you're going to have a better chance of seeing or hearing a Sasquatch on Vancouver Island than you will finding its tracks. Because, as we all know, they're pretty elusive, and they don't like leaving their tracks. And as I always say about Vancouver Island, we just had it was snowing in Vancouver today all day long. It just didn't stick. But other parts of coastal British Columbia are white right now, and we've had one of the whitest winters on record in coastal British Columbia. And I always say, don't waste your time up in the hills looking for a sign of Sasquatch in the wintertime, because they're not there. They're on the beaches. That's where they're harvesting the high accumulation of shellfish and other foods during the wintertime. And the other thing about the coastal Sasquatch, Vancouver Island Sasquatch, is they're like me. They don't like snow. And through the decades, I've found through the patterns and research that when you do have track sightings in the snow of Vancouver Island, it's generally leading downhill to the saltwater, and then they disappear in a straight line from downhill down to the beach. It means they went in the water and they swam into the archipelago islands between Vancouver Island and the mainland, from central Vancouver Island around Campbell River all the way up to almost the top end, or actually the top end. And the reason why is because it's less accumulation of snow. Alert Bay, for example. The people used to all converge to Alert Bay in the wintertime. It was sort of an Armo de Cosmo, a center of the Kwakwaka'wakw universe with numerous tribes living there, because it got low amounts of snow compared to, like, the Dumgees people. They had like 5 different clans up on the river, or the Nimkish River, but they would converge in Alert Bay and the mouth of Nimkish River because there's less snowfall there than interior Vancouver Island. The people who lived at the head of their inlets, they would move out to the archipelago islands because there's less snowfall. And that's the same pattern that's indicative of Sasquatch migrations during late fall, early winter, because Sasquatches in our region don't like snow.
What about those that are inland? For instance, up here in the Caribou where I am, okay, there's no place to hide unless they're finding an old mine shaft to stay warm in during the winter or something along those lines.
I can't say because I've spent some time there, like around Blue River in the wintertime, trapping with my uncle years ago, but I was just a kid, so I didn't really look. And, you know, what I really do know about central British Columbia in the wintertime is what I see out the window of the vehicle going north or south on the highway. So I spent the winter last year up in the Northwest Territories, and, oh, yeah, I looked there high and low for track and sign on the snowmobile, but, you know, I never did come across any. So it's not my realm of, I guess you'd say, expertise, so I'll keep it focused for my efforts on the coast, because I know that area and I've grown up here. But I wish all the luck, and if I can help anyone in the interior that might be listening that's, you know, an enthusiast or a researcher, if I can help them a little bit, you know, definitely get a hold of me through social media, Sasquatch Island, or my name, Thomas Sewid, or, you know, give me a phone call if you post it on your website there, my contact information for this podcast, because it's what it's all about. We got to communicate with one another. We have to share information, you know, like I'm reading stuff on the deserts down in United States, because some of the reports and some of the way some of these researchers are putting out their reports and, you know, their notes from their research weekends and so forth. It's intriguing because water's something that's readily available where I am, but down there, you know, you can go a great distance and not have any water, and, you know, you have to plan and live your existence according to low resource of water. So when you look at that, you know, there's some things like what they're seeing, they're harvesting for foods and that's kind of indicative to the coast here, like on Vancouver Island. Like, you know, sure, it's inhabited. We have farms on there and so forth. And one of the things I'm starting to tap into now is interviewing the guys that are growing corn. And I'm finding that on central Vancouver Island, when I talk to some of these farmers, you know, who pulls it out to a farmer's gate and puts a Ziploc bag there with contact information and a one-page write-up that, you know, hey, I'm a Sasquatch researcher, here's my information, here's my links to check me out. And all of a sudden someone phones me or emails me and says, hey, I'll meet you at Black Creek store on Sunday. And I go there and meet this farmer I don't know from a hole in the ground. And he says, yeah, as a matter of fact, I have every year this instance of this creature that keeps pummeling my corn in this one corner of my field. And my dogs won't even go there. And if you want to set your trail cameras up there this year, you know, I think the best time would be probably middle of August when you get your trail cameras up. And that's usually when they start hitting the corn in that area of my field. That's, you know, thinking out of the box, but communicating with a note in a Ziploc bag on a farmer's fence, you know, and that's how we have to look at it, you know. And then, like I say, I'm not going to, like I told that person last night on Facebook, I'm not here to debate. I'm going to concentrate on finding conclusive proof of the existence of Bigfoot Sasquatch.
Claudia has a question, and she's American Indian. She says, since Bigfoot lives on reservations or in Indian land, do you think that it's because of the ceremonies and with the shaman's gifts of seeing through the veil, Bigfoot can see who can see through the veil and feel comfortable there?
Yeah, definitely. Number one, geography. Like I did in tourism, I said, if you come to British Columbia, you want to stay in a native campground on our Indian reserves. The reason being is the Dominion of Canada back in the day put our people throughout British Columbia on Indian reserves that were not good for agriculture or ranching. But nowadays, they make for great places to camp. And the campsites they have there have beautiful viewscapes and beautiful environment and nice rivers and so forth. So that being said, I don't know much about the American Indian reserves, but the few that I have visited, Blackfoot and some in Arizona and that, they're in places that aren't good for agriculture or ranching, but they're great places for living, for a Sasquatch to live. And because numerous Indian reserves that I see on maps in the United States are monstrous in size compared to us coastal First Nations, we just got little acreages here and there. You got area that doesn't have access for people to get in there, plus it's private property, it's Indian reserve. And with the natives, with whatever they're doing with shamans and that, I can't speak on because I don't know. But yeah, you know, there is that, always has been that connection between the indigenous people of Turtle Island and the Sasquatches. And I highly respect, if I go to approach some tribe or some individual from a tribe that I'm not from, and they say, no, we do not allow this, and thanks, but no thanks, I will 100% support that. And yeah, I don't believe in the woo-woo, but I totally respect and believe in the beliefs of some of the tribes that believe in the shape-shifting and skinwalkers, and that could possibly be what's happening. I don't know. I will never speak for those tribes because it's not our way. But yeah, it's, you know, what your question was, it's like, yes, and that's why I'm not pushing but advocating that, yeah, it's time, I think, that we indigenous people that are willing to share come forward and share, because I think it's going to help us protect them and the environment they live in, which, are we not all trying to do that? Aren't we all trying to do what they're trying to do at Standing Rock? We're trying to say enough is enough. Let's try to protect what we have out there that we haven't destroyed yet, because if we continue on the path we're going on, we will destroy our Mother Earth. We've proven it beyond a reasonable doubt in the last 250 years on Turtle Island. And I believe fully that as we as Indigenous people need to come forward with our beliefs and our perspectives of Sasquatch, Bigfoot, so that we can help ensure that we don't have to do like Standing Rock and protest. We just need to step forward and say, this is why we don't want anything here. And we have the support from the non-natives, we have support from these organizations, and we have support from some of these industries. And then we're going to see what that common goal we want, to see that this Turtle Island is still here 250 years from now for us and the Sasquatch Bigfoot to live as we've lived for the last 250 years or 250,000.
So getting back to the creature then and its environment, yep. Dawn wants to know how much land around where you see Bigfoot is Crown land?
Most of it, probably 99.6% of it.
That's a lot of area.
I live in my territory. That's why I brought Operation Sea Monkey, invited them up there, you know, the North American Primate Conservancy, Todd Neese, and told him, get your butt up here, you know, because people that are looking for Sasquatches in the forests of Turtle Island, to me it's like finding a needle in 100 hectares of cornfield or hayfield. It's next to impossible. And, BFRO is showing us that beyond a shadow of a doubt. They haven't got a good crispy film. They even had the FLIR trailer with the FLIR camera. And I'm sitting, and they couldn't come up with anything other than a doe walking through the slash. So come to coastal British Columbia. Come to an area that from end of September through until the end of April, these creatures are down at sea level, concentrating on cockle beaches, other shellfish beaches, which abound, but you got to know the right ones. And then your chances with your FLIR and your trail cameras, and you're just sitting there and watching with your night scopes, you're more than likely going to come up spades, because, I've had 3 incidents out there in coastal, my region. But when you talk to the people, looking at 85% living there for a decade or more having encounters. When you look at Vancouver Island with the highest concentration of Sasquatch carvings on Earth, why? Because there's a lot of dang critters out there that we're sharing this region with. So if you're going to come look for Sasquatch, maybe come here so you can get the First Nations perspective from the First Nations, from our communities with all the totem poles carved of it, see our dancers, see our cultural centers, go to the provincial museums in Seattle, Victoria, Vancouver, Campbell River, Alert Bay, elsewhere, and, come to Campbell River, Vancouver, and the most seen item in British Columbia is the totem pole structure, where when you look at Sasquatch Island, my Facebook group, you see me squatting in front of that totem image of a thing that's squatting with outstretched arms, and I'm imitating her. That's a Junakwa. And there's another Junakwa on that same totem pole cluster and another totem pole. And when Vancouver, you can't go anywhere in Vancouver without seeing a native art gallery that's just filled with Sasquatch, Bigfoot interpretations from different tribes of coastal British Columbia and the interior. So you want to find these things, you want to learn more, that's what Sasquatch Island Facebook group is. It's a smoke signal saying, come here, because your chances of seeing one are way better. And that's one of the reasons why I'm working for a company that has 36 yachts that I manage and sailboats, because I do adventures multi-day with boats, yachts included, and all types of boats into my region and other regions of the Pacific Northwest, because, it's a business. I'm Tommy, the culture vulture tour whore, whatever. It's modern day. I got to make green like everyone else. And at the same turn, I'm trying to get conclusive proof of the existence of these creatures. So I'm blending both my ancient, my modern, and my modern way of having to generate revenue. It's my career and livelihood. Just that I'm using Sasquatch Bigfoot as one of the ways to generate that revenue, because, hey, you got to get out these territories, because if you don't see it, you're going to eat a hell of a lot of good seafood, cockles, clams, prawns, halibut, cod, and the salmon. The list goes on. This is bucket list material, so get up here and let's go see if we can find these things.
Mm-hmm. We only have a few minutes left with you, my friend, and unfortunately this has gone by way too fast. I hope you've had a good birthday with us here.
Oh, yeah, it's been great.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dennis would like to know, are you planning on attending any conferences soon for people to hear you to speak?
Yes. Scheduled for July for Beachfoot in Oregon with American Primate Conservancy. And I'm scheduled for September for Eastern Washington State, the International Sasquatch Convention. They invited me to speak. The Montana one, due to funds, so if anyone's in Montana listening or the region, the girl emailed me yesterday, and she was very sorry that I was on the list to be a speaker, but due to funding restraints for the conference, they have to decline this year. So if anyone's out there in the Montana region, you might want to give what's her name, or contact me. I'll give you the contacts. Maybe you guys can do something out there, and I can even ship a carving out there of a Sasquatch and Junakwa, and you guys can raffle it off to raise some funds to get my FBI butt out there so I can come share my information with you guys. And anywhere else, give me a call. I love traveling along. My wife comes with me, and she does the Chunahua and the Bakwus dance, and I'll be drumming, so you get to see traditional dance in costume, mask carved in cedar of Chunahua and Bakwus when I go to these conferences. So yeah, by all means, I love going to conferences, meeting all you people, and best way is sharing my culture and heritage with y'all and seeing the Chunahua dance in person. It's amazing.
It is amazing, and for people who've never seen anything like that, and I've only seen it a couple of times in my life, it is beautiful. That is for sure. The cultural experience is beautiful. We got about 3 minutes left with you. If you had someone approach you who is an absolute virgin to Sasquatch hunting, and they say, Tommy, I want to get into this. I'm a believer. I want to find my own information. What advice do you give them?
Get a FLIR and get out there because they're nocturnal. And the best thing is learn your bush skills. Learn it wisely. Go with a hunter of something big like a moose hunter or a bear hunter, and learn hunting skills because that's what you're going to do. And you got to learn stealth mode. And, modern day white man's magic, no offense for you non-natives out there, but the modern day smoke signal, the most powerful tool invented by human to date, the internet. Get a hold of me. I'll be happy to help you. Nowadays with free phone calls, with video chat on Facebook and video chat on Gmail, hey, I'd be more than happy to talk to you and share with you how to be a researcher and tweak it up a bit so you're crispy when you get out there into your backyards and your different regions, and hopefully find a critter and document it well.
Is it tough for people to find? I know I've been out of the bush. My friend Mike has been out of the bush for 30 years. He's never seen one. How do you know when you're around one?
You'll hear it, you'll smell it, and believe your gut instinct, your sixth sense, spidey senses. You feel something, you definitely probably got something eyeballing you, so check around. And always remember, Patterson Gilman, we know how shaky and everything that was until M.K. Davis and others stabilized it. You're gonna be taking pictures of something where you're gonna be probably hyperventilating, hearing your heart pound in your ears, and you're gonna be shaky and everything. Concentrate on keeping that camera still. Try not to zoom or pan or anything. Just get that thing in the center of your screen and hold it crispy. And remember, when you see those crispy shots, why are they always blob scotches and blurry and fuzzy? Because the guys that get into National Geographic and other magazines, they take thousands and hundreds of pictures to get that crispy, clear one. So always remember, take a lot of pictures, stabilize it, try to keep control of your emotions. I haven't filmed one yet because we didn't have film in our camera that night. But when I do, I always tell myself, be crisp, Tom, be steady, do this. Go through, like when you practice with a rifle to shoot an animal so you don't wound it or miss it. Do the same with your cameras. Practice walking, running and stopping. Practice everything so that you can get that picture so someone doesn't go whining away. How come the pictures of Sasquatch are always blurry and shaky? Yeah, there's only one way we're going to shut them up, and that's give them a crystal clear National Geographic type image multiplied by many images. So that's the advice I can give you tonight, and hopefully I'll be on your podcast again. I got more to talk about.
Always, my friend, you have a good invite to come on this show anytime you want. Much pleasure to chat with you. Once again, quickly give out your Facebook group.
My Facebook group is Sasquatch Island, and my personal is Thomas Sewid, but try to join Sasquatch Island, and I'll communicate with you from there. And don't forget, hamumuadventures.com. That's my website tour company with my wife, and the best way to get a hold of me.
Excellent, Tom. Thanks for coming on. You hold on for just a couple of minutes. I got to wrap this thing up. If you're listening in on the Spaced Out Radio side, which includes WQEE 99 Rock the Key in Noonan, Georgia, and on the United Public Radio Network live on 107.7 FM, you are hearing Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot brings us in and takes us home every single night on this show as the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Tomorrow night on the program, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. The Crypto Guru will be back. Ronald Murphy, one of our top guests on this show. If you haven't heard him speak before, you're in for a real treat. We're talking fairies, gnomes, gargoyles, goblins, whatever else is strange in the land of the Fae. We're getting into it tomorrow night. Remember, if you would like to hear this show, you can go to our YouTube channel, Space Out Radio Show. Download it on iTunes. Tune in. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, and on Stitcher. Thank you so much for being with us, my friends. I appreciate your time. Don't forget, if you want to become a space traveler, go to our website, $5 a month. If you want to support us on Patreon.com and become one of our patrons, like Rhonda did tonight, go to Patreon.com. Space Out Radio on there. We'd love to give back to you. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you in 21 hours from now. Do me a favor, tell a friend, because we're growing this thing, and it's growing big, it's growing fast, all because of you. Have a good one. Good night.